Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Game Informer Show. I'm your host, Ben Hanson, joined as always by trusty Timothy Turi.
Yeah. Hello. Hi. Hello. How are you doing?
Are you in a rush? You cool?
Come on. Got a podcast to do here. Come on.
All right.
Get to the good stuff.
All right, we got Joe Juba here.
Yeah.
And we got Andrew Reiner.
Shut up! Oh, sorry. That was a Ben Hanson reflex. Sorry. I mean, hi. Good to see you, Ben
I'm going to
Hanson.
go take a seat behind the cameras back there.
That's where you belong.
But welcome to a new episode of the Game Informer Show. This is one of those good episodes that I hear so much about.
I've been to the future. I know what you mean.
Great. We are going to be covering The Witness, which is a hot new puzzle game all the kids are talking about. They can't get off that island. Then we got Andrew Reiner to talk about Lego Marvel, all the ups and downs of the new Avengers game, some other doodads along the way, some emails, some fun stuff. And then at the end, I'm joined by Dan Tack, and we have a long interview with the folks who made Darkest Dungeon.
Very cool.
Who is Chris Bourassa, creative director, and Tyler Sigmanabout, design director.
If I know Dan Tack and can draw my memories from our trip to From Software interviewing Hidetaka, help me out again. Hidetaka Miyazaki, the creator, then you're going to get some super nitty-gritty, crazy specific questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is exactly it.
It's always a good time.
But hopefully it covers all the bases, where it's me basically picking up where we left off in the podcast last week in terms of like, who the hell are these guys? Where are they coming from? How did they pull this off? What's the studio like? What's the future like? And then Dan being like, tell me about the nerf of the Jester class and all that. Also, there's great moments too where like, it's tough interviewing Dan because I don't know if he has a lot chambered, like ready to go, or if he's like out of questions. So like after he's already asked a couple, I was like, well, I'll prompt him here, and this will be a nice segue. Or like, hey Dan, you've spent hundreds of hours with this game. Like, what are some of the basic tips? And the designers too. Like, what are some of the tips you'd give to newcomers? Dan's like, yeah, well, and then he just asked like a completely different question. So listen for that. It's good. I was totally happy with it. I think it's funny.
So Dan Tax learned the lesson and the importance of ignoring Ben Hanson.
Great. What is this theme occurring on this show?
What do you think, Tim?
The importance of earnestly ignoring Ben Hanson.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Sweetly, sincerely ignoring everything that I have to say. But we should start out talking to Joe Juba about presumably the best game he's played so far this year, which is clearly Jackbox Party Pack.
Oh, man. I am a recent convert to Jackbox Party Pack. As much as I wanted you to be wrong on that front, that is a fun game.
So you went in there, fingers crossed, God, I hope we don't have fun tonight so that I can go back and yell at Ben Hanson.
I mean, I'm sure there was some part in the back of my mind that was hoping for that.
It's just a pass or fail. Like, are your friends fun or not? And are they kind of funny and clever? Then you passed.
Because it was Quiplash in particular was just great. It's the best.
What is the best answer from the entire evening of playing with Miller and a bunch of other?
I don't know. I thought all my answers were the best ones.
Laughed the hardest at those. Right.
Joe, good for you.
You really did it, man. Cool. All right, but we should actually talk about The Witness.
Yeah, The Witness is probably more relevant.
And is it the best game you think you've played so far this year?
Boy, I mean, probably. The year's not that long, but I think that will probably hold true even for a little while yet. I mean, I gave it. You can read the review on the site. It's a 9.25.
So this is Jonathan Blow's new game, the creator of Braid, who's just been sitting in a basement peeing into a bottle for the last 7 years.
Well, that's the speculation. There's been no confirmation on that.
Just one bottle?
Pee.
It's a huge bottle.
That's right. And he pees actually in lines on the walls in certain patterns.
That's how he comes up with the puzzle solutions?
Yeah.
Whoa. I like it.
Joe Juba, why do you love this game so much?
Okay, so it's kind of hard. It's kind of a hard sell actually, because to describe it basically, you're just like, okay, so you're walking around on this island and you're drawing some lines on grids. You know, it's like, okay, there's a monitor in front of you that's maybe like a 4x4 grid that you draw. You start at one point and you draw like a white line to another point.
925.
Yeah, which I mean, at its basic level, that's what it is. But the way, obviously, like your line needs to follow a particular path, right? So the things that the game introduces to sort of restrict how you can draw that and how you can like see what path you're supposed to take are super interesting, and they get sort of layered on top of each other. So like I'm not going to get too spoilery with this, but a very basic early example that you get is like that there might be on the grid, there might be like different color blocks, right? Like a black and like a few black color blocks and a few white ones. And you need to like separate those, like keep them in different, like divide them, have them in different sections of the grid.
Mm-hmm.
So, but maybe you're working with a grid with a whole bunch of those color blocks on them. So you have to draw like a very intricate path and like, do some trial and error to find out which path you can draw that actually correctly like divides those colors. But then maybe there are some other restrictions that aren't just the color blocks. And that's when the puzzles start to get like more fun and complicated, is when there's, maybe there are 3 kinds of blocks and all of them need to be satisfied. And
it's trying to understand on what level they're trying to be satisfied, because in theory everyone has a different twist to it.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. And like and so they all 3, you need to satisfy the conditions for all of the blocks on the board. There's no half success on it. Either you solve it correctly and they're all right, or you don't. But then there are also some things that might like so in that way, I guess the game sort of builds rules for you to follow, right? But then there are also blocks that they introduce later that I'm not going to say too much about, that actually like their rules are that you have to break previous rules.
So
this sounds terrible.
So
what I'm gathering is it's just like any good puzzle game where it starts with a very, very simple concept, and it's just through introducing sort of out of the box thinking that you have to think outside the box to sort of use those rules.
And it's really about okay. So here's the best way I can talk about it is like when you think about Braid, which is a game that a lot of people played and really liked. Like part of the key to that game and part of what made it so satisfying was the way it builds on itself, right? Where it's like they give you an easy puzzle, which you realize isn't really a puzzle. It's just there to teach you something. And then the second one is like, okay, you know the basics. Here's a little more about how it works. And then by the time you get to like, later puzzles in the sequence, you're not learning anymore. You're just like playing around with these different concepts. So it's a slow sort of like building process and learning process from like easy to ridiculously complex. And Witness follows that same sort of formula as Braid on like on a like structural level.
How much? So one of my favorite parts from Braid, one of the like parts where it just blows your mind, is when you have to. If you haven't played Braid, this is a spoiler for a puzzle, but you're making these puzzles. You're getting pieces for puzzles and putting the puzzles together. And at one point, the border for that puzzle piece extends a platform so that you can use it to jump across outside of the puzzle.
Yep.
And it was one of those moments where you just zoom out a little bit, like, oh, this game is doing different things, and it's just like, what percentage of that level of cleverness finds its way into what I'm hearing are like sound like really straightforward puzzle design.
So there's a lot of stuff like that. So like not every puzzle is just like, oh, well, these are the symbols and this is what they mean. Sometimes the physical world around you influences like what you can and can't draw. So like for instance, if there's a physical like object on the grid, you can't like draw past it. So if there's like a piece of metal leaning up against the grid, you can't like draw that line.
Okay, that's interesting.
So
the island, parts of the island around you that exist outside of this little screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So and then there's also things that like, let's say that like part of the world, again, like I don't want to say too much about it, but like maybe there are shadows being cast on the grid, and maybe that has some sort of influence as to like how you should or shouldn't be proceeding and stuff like that.
You're so careful about not spoiling stuff, which we appreciate. Is it easy to boil down, like, and then this big twist happens at the end, or is it just a matter of you don't want to spoil specific puzzles along the way? It never like, it's not like the island blows up and suddenly you're doing something else completely.
And in fact, we can get to that in a second too, because like this is not a story forward game. There's no story thing for me to twist or like for me to spoil. What the spoiler in this game becomes is like, because so much of what makes the game fun are those like tiny victories peppered along the way, the tiny things where it's like you enter an area and you're like, oh, what's going on in here? What am I supposed to be doing? And like discovering that and discovering the different mechanics and how they work and the different ways they're applied is like that is the game. That is the fun of the game. So by like going in there and like saying exactly how a particular mechanic functions or outlining exactly how like different ones play against each other, is sort of like I don't want to take that moment of discovery away from people who are playing it, because like I said, there is no story. There's not a lot to like the
no
world.
Story?
No. Oh, I mean, not substantial.
But not, I mean, like Braid didn't even really have substantial story. There were written things in between it, and it bookended it very interestingly with some story, but like there's even less than like those text.
Yeah, I think The Witness, like if you're looking, and this was sort of a complaint of mine, not because I think that The Witness or like a puzzle game needs to have like a deep story, but I think where the problem comes in with it is that like you're in this cool world, you're on this island that has all these like weird structures and machines and like ruins,
frozen
and stuff.
people and stone.
Yeah,
and
like what are either like people or statues or something all over the place, and so like just by nature of the world that you're in and exploring, you sort of like questions come up. You're like, what's going on here? Who are these guys? Why are these machines set up everywhere?
Why is it called The Witness?
That's exactly what I wanted.
Why is it called The Witness? And like, so these questions just naturally come up, even if the game doesn't explicitly have a narrative that like, steers you toward them. You're going to ask them, and the game isn't going to answer them.
It's one of those things where 4 years from now, people will finally piece together what this game was really about.
Well, so what I know, I was not able to get to these things myself, but there are so there are certain voice recordings that you'll find around the world that are basically just like quotes from famous, thinkers throughout time.
It sounds like Braid to some extent. Yeah.
So, but beyond that, I've been told that there are also recordings that are sort of like in secret places, hidden in the island. There aren't a lot of them. For the people who are going to be like very thorough, for the people who are like super committed, the 100%ers kind of thing, they will find a series of recordings that are a little more explicit.
And
You said Jonathan Blow laughing at him.
Speaking of 100%er, did you say something like maybe 600 puzzles in this game? 400?
No, I think I finished about 400. I think that there are like around 650.
So, all right, and that, when we say puzzle, are we just talking about like a little screen puzzle?
They all count.
Okay.
So it's like the very first puzzle that you encounter in the game, again, like I was talking about teaching, is just like a little bulb with a line that teaches you like the bulb is the starting point and this little curvy thing at the end is the ending.
Okay.
That's where I got stuck in my playthrough.
Yeah, that's a puzzle. But another puzzle is like maybe a 6x6 grid with 3 different kinds of symbols and like 6 different kinds of each of them on there or something. So like they all count the same in terms of like puzzle count.
Are sections of this island like gated off and you have to complete so many to get to other ones, or is that
not exactly? So that's another thing that I actually really like about it is like theoretically it's open world and like free. You can go into any section kind of.
okay?
Except there are some sections that you can't really like progress unless you've built a certain vocabulary.
Right.
So like I said, like let's say that you didn't encounter the puzzles that teach you about like you need to separate the black color blocks from the white colored blocks. If you haven't encountered that series of puzzle, when you see those shapes on a more complicated puzzle, you might just be like, I don't know what these do. I don't know. So in that sense, you can't really progress because like it's not even clear what the obstacle is.
You haven't been taught that by solving a different puzzle.
Right.
Yeah.
But in that case, you can always go. So it's an open world game. So you can just sort of like walk to a different part of the island and go tackle a different section. And then maybe you'll learn what the symbols are and you can go back. So
It is really nice.
I mean,
just to have that freedom.
that does sound appealing. What I'm curious about too is just like, how do you know when you're done with this game?
For sure.
Like,
yeah. Okay.
is that something you can even go into? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this isn't. I mean, it's funny because like the story stuff is actually the least spoilery stuff, and that's like the game is sort of separated into zones, so it's not like the puzzles are all, just sort of random.
Sure.
So they're sort of segregated into like concepts. So when you can complete an area that focuses on one concept, there's like this device that comes out of something and like shoots a laser beam toward a mountain on one end of the island. So if you go and follow that laser beam, you find out that you need to unlock a certain number of. I think you need to complete like 7 areas.
Okay.
So then once you do that, it triggers whatever happens at the mountain, and then you sort of enter the
Bowser boss fight.
the boss
Yeah.
puzzles.
You throw them into the bombs.
Yeah.
Did you start this game yet, Reiner?
No, but I walked by Joe's desk a lot while he was reviewing it, and he looked like he was doing the same crap over and over, just drawing this white line on these tablets. And then each day I'd come back, there'd be more notes, like beautiful mind, full on like cardboard cutouts. Like he's making dioramas. There's like 3 people around him all
Pins
arguing.
and strings.
Yeah.
I just need to make sure like this game is fun. Like what's fun about this game? Or did you like suffer like some kind of Stockholm syndrome, get indoctrinated with blowitis or something? Like
No. Okay.
what is fun about the core mechanic?
Yeah,
Like
tell us about your blow
every time I would see you playing it, it would just be you'd be just looking at this tablet and just drawing a little line and then like, nope, I'll try it a different
Also,
way.
can
Like,
we talk about
what is fun about that?
that bucket that you keep by your desk?
Yeah. Okay.
I personally saw Joe rip all of his hair out while trying to review this game.
So
Like what is fun about the core mechanic?
I mean, it's a puzzle game, so it's not like the actual like gameplay of it is super solid. I mean, I guess I'd say the same thing about like Portal. Portal isn't fun because of you're like walking around and shooting or exploring. It's fun because you're playing with like the way the sort of puzzle mechanics work. And that's the same thing. I think that's the same thing for me in The Witness is like, it's not necessarily the like mechanics of it that's fun. It's how like elegantly the puzzles are designed, and that little like rush of satisfaction you get when you like finally figure out a particularly tough solution. I mean, it's almost the same way. It's a weird analogy, but you know, like in like the Souls games, after you've been like banging your head against a boss for a while, and then you like finally do it. There's that sense of like well earned reward.
But imagine instead of like a giant demon, it's just a white line and a bunch of squares slowly moving throughout.
Yeah, at least it doesn't control like a PS2 game. So. Zing! Wow. All right.
Nice.
I don't agree with that.
All in all, did you enjoy this game more than Braid, do you think?
Boy, that's a tough. I think Braid is probably a little higher for me, just because it does have that like narrative layer on it that I found more interesting. But that's also kind of tricky because like as a sort of like whole experience, I think Braid is more fun and maybe more compact. But I think as like a puzzle experience, The Witness is better. Like the puzzles in The Witness are better. It's more like it's better laid out in terms of the sort of like the way it teaches you and the way it sort of gives you that satisfaction for like solving something challenging.
I mean, and also Braid drew on these platforming skills to a degree, and like that it feels like there's just less wiggle room for just like, oh, I've blown it in The Witness. You can look at a puzzle, understand what to do, whereas Braid is like, if you don't have that extra like skill layer of it, you're not going to be able to solve some of these puzzles as well.
There's very little in The Witness that requires any sort of like dexterity. There are a couple sequences.
Oh, interesting.
How long do you think you feel like you played it?
Whoa, I mean, the game doesn't keep a counter, so it's kind of hard.
The
hard to say.
blowitis too distorts time.
But I think
60
it was
hours.
I think for me it was probably closer to 30-ish. It's
pretty good. So
30 hours?
Probably about that.
Holy hell!
There was there was one puzzle in particular that like, I mean, I was making it more complicated than it needed to be, but I was probably stuck on that one. This is the one I made the cutouts for like 2 hours.
A 30-hour puzzle game, and it was consistent throughout. Like that's a marvel.
And I didn't even do all of it. There were still like I said, I completed about 400 puzzles. So there's still
insane.
And
a
people
lot
are
of them on
gawking at
table.
the $40 price point too.
Yeah.
This is an indie game, but in your mind, totally worth it.
Oh, I mean, I think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't think if you like puzzle games, I don't think you can find like a more gratifying or like cleverly designed sequence of puzzles anywhere.
Yeah,
And
I feel
it's-
like. Oh, go ahead.
PS4, PC,
That's it right now. Yep.
and then there's a rumor of Xbox One.
Right. But yeah, I
this
don't know
makes-
what the official word is on that
Would
though.
this game make sense on like iPad or something like that at some point?
I thought they were talking about that also.
Would that work? Just, I mean, Minecraft controls and then actually dragging your finger along the actual boxes. But some of them get pretty nitty gritty and like small, you know?
Yeah, it could be tough because like a lot of iPad stuff then would rely on like tap to move, and like that would be hard because again, like in some puzzles, your perspective, like the specific angle that you're looking at the grid, makes a big difference.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I started the game last night and I was kind of struck. First of all, I loved Myst back in the day. I haven't really liked puzzle games since, but I loved Myst. And like the original pitch for this game, first time I saw it, I was like, oh, it's just like Myst. And then it kind of, as time went on, you're like, oh, maybe it's complex. But I realized like going into it last night, like if you loved Myst, like that's the type of fan that this game is trying to cater to.
yeah, and especially in the sense like I've talked to several people now who were really attracted by the idea that like this is a game that you want to keep like graph paper nearby. This is an old school puzzle, like you need to take some notes kind of puzzle game.
Interesting. I like seeing the
get your note
resurgence
on.
of that with like that and then her story, people took a lot of notes, and I know with Broken Age, the second part, there were like puzzles specifically where you needed to write stuff down.
Here's a random question for you.
Okay.
In this day and age where you can go online and see solutions on YouTube, for people that maybe don't want to do that graph paper, is there any randomization to the puzzles, or will every solution be the same? Can you like go online and if you get stumped, find the solution?
I don't believe so. I think that if you, I guess I don't know for sure,
the
but
way
I think they're all the same.
The way I've seen people tweeting about it and tweeting out subtle hints, or hey, here's a link to a hint for that puzzle, or something like that. It sounds like that those hints are they're referencing puzzles that don't change.
Yeah.
I don't think they change.
And I guess what it's like the puzzles feel like there is more authorial control over them than that. You know, like it's not just like, hey, here's a set of rules, randomize. Like they're clearly put together in a very deliberate way to like make you think about something or approach something in a certain way.
I don't want to think. Sometimes I don't want to think. Sometimes I don't want to think. I just want to hit things until they fall apart into smaller pieces and then collect those pieces, and then build stuff with them.
But what if you threw some obtuse puzzles in there just to shake things up a little bit?
Just so I had to switch characters? Or
Right.
something?
Just enough to be annoyed by.
Okay. Can any of them
Where are you guys
fly?
going with this? This doesn't sound like the witness.
We're going to talk about Jackbox again.
Yeah.
Reiner, let's talk about Lego Marvels Avengers.
Yeah.
The new Lego game. What'd you think of this thing?
The 18 or 80 billionth Lego game out on the market now.
Holy Lord, it's a lot of these
And
things.
you've played like every one of these now,
I have
right?
finished every Traveler's Tales
How does that
Lego
feel?
game.
Is it mostly because you review like a
I
lot
stared
of
at the TV and just
Hold
cried.
on. Did you finish both versions of Lego Indiana Jones?
Yes.
All right. Well,
They're completely different.
You got me.
The connoisseur's choice is Lego Indiana Jones 2, by the way.
Yeah,
I
the
know.
Open world. Yeah.
There you go. So, Reiner, it's confusing with this game because a couple years ago we did the cover story on it. We did Lego Marvel Superheroes, which was like all of Marvel. And the good thing on that pitch was they were all talking about like, hey, man, it's not just the movie stuff. We're going to have X-Men. We're going to have Fantastic Four. There's even Guardians of the Galaxy in there. Like, it's everything great that's within Marvel. Spider-Man, for Christ's sake. Throw it into this game. Original storyline. And now it's like, hey, come back, everybody. Did you like that Joss Whedon movie from 2010?
Yeah, so it is the new game, Lego Marvels Avengers, is based on the Avengers, Age of Ultron, and then there's also Captain America First Avenger, Thor Dark World, Captain America the Winter Soldier. I think that's it.
So what's not in there is like no Ant-Man, no Guardians of the Galaxy. Correct. Okay.
Yeah, those aren't in there yet, which there's a season pass coming, free DLC. I'm guessing all that stuff's coming at a later date.
Or are they going to save that for like the Infinity War Lego game where then you jump back into those other games?
Hold on a second. Just backing up to make sure I get this. So the last Lego Marvel game did have Guardians of the Galaxy, X-Men.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
That's where it gets tough. And also it's like, hey, it's New York again. So I think people are primed to be disappointed by this game, but what's your take so far?
It's a good game. Like Lego Traveler's Tales or TT games, they make good quality, fun co-op games that the family can enjoy.
Sure.
And they have a lot of fun with those movies and parodying them.
There's a giant butt rising over the horizon.
Oh.
Yeah.
They have a good sense of humor. It's fun to relive those stories, those movie stories with, the sight gags. I mean, they're everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
I giggled all the way through those games, but it has an even bigger roster of characters. Like you're talking about all these properties being in the last game. Mm-hmm. They have an even bigger pool of characters in this one, but
fewer properties.
So this means they are going beyond the A-listers, the Iron Mans, the Captain Americas.
Beyond the Matt Millers is another way to put it.
Beyond the B-listers.
That's right.
Beyond the C-listers, down to, I would say, the D-listers and characters you have never heard of.
What's the weirdest guy?
J. Jonah Jameson's assistant.
Egghead?
Yeah, Egghead. There's a guy that looks like a conehead named Egghead or Eggman or something like that.
Or what about...
Robotnik here, I think.
Didn't you say in your review about like someone named Reptile that's like on one page?
Yeah, Reptile, his last appearance was in Avengers Academy issue 13. He was only on page 19.
What year did that come out? I mean, roughly. Do you know? Like,
probably in the 2000s.
Oh, okay.
We're down to like 4 people playing this that are going to recognize that. That is the level that those guys are getting down to.
But the entire time I was playing this, it was like I would unlock a character and I'd get excited because it's like, oh, who am I going to get? That's always such a fun part of these games is kind of that finishing the campaign and then going into the open world and just unlocking a ton of guys.
Yeah.
And I'd get characters, I just had no idea who they were. It's like, you just unlocked Finesse. And I'm like, I've never heard of Finesse.
Beth the
so
Waitress.
I'd have to go online. Yeah, I'd have to go online and be like, Marvel Universe Finesse. And it's like, oh, she hasn't appeared since like the 80s. And there's characters that haven't appeared anywhere since like 1950.
That's kind of cool. I do like that angle of
It's a
seeing
super
what they can
deep
scrape.
dive for comic fans, for Marvel comic fans. But if you are a casual comic fan, like watching the movies or whatever, and you want the Mr. Fantastics, the Spider-Mans, all that, you're not going to get them. You're going to get these really obscure characters that probably hold as much meaning to you.
Unless you want to stick to the main cast.
But you're still getting the Avengers and
you're getting
and
like
those guys.
20 versions of Iron Man, all 6 versions of Captain America. You have all those fun characters.
Doctor Strange is in there. That's nice.
Yeah. The one thing I would say is the characters from Lego Marvel Superheroes, maybe it was a smaller roster, but they feel more defined and more planned out, and that like they actually did more fun things with those characters in terms of control and the powers you have.
Well, just Spider-Man alone shook things up so much.
And then this game, you have some of the characters are kind of fleshed out like that, but a lot of these characters that you're unlocking are very basic in their movesets and very repetitive in those movesets. Like you'll hit circle button and you'll shoot a stream of energy. Maybe it's a different color than the last character stream of energy.
Or maybe it's steam instead of energy.
Yeah,
right?
or a cloud. You shoot a cloud or something. But there's a character named Cloud9 I've never heard of. But
I'm interested.
Yeah, so it is a super, super deep dive into the Marvel Universe. So it's kind of a tale of two games where you have these very nicely done, story-based campaign missions for the Avengers movies, all that stuff. And then the second half of the game, which is where you spend most of your time in these Lego games, unlocking characters, getting the secrets, going back through the levels. And that consists of just these random, weird characters.
Though I will say, as someone who's played a lot of like Lego games, like Lord of the Rings and Jurassic Park, like I'm way more excited about getting some like random Marvel character than I am about like Uruk-hai B or something.
man with fez.
Yeah, I mean like those are even more generic. So the fact, I mean, even if they don't have super distinct abilities, I think the fact that it's a throwback to a character that actually did exist is cooler than just being like, this is a repairman.
Yeah.
Does the game do anything to rise above the Lego game formula that we all?
What does that mean?
Hold on a second. I didn't. I played Jurassic World, and it's just like, I'm not going to finish this.
Yeah, it fits like a glove, like a very well-worn glove in terms of mechanics. Yeah, it goes all the way back to the first one, Lego Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
Like the very same thing of breaking bricks, reassembling them into something else, having those puzzle mechanics kind of disperse through the levels.
Specific characters opening specific doors.
That hasn't changed at all. The open world is once again New York, which is the exact same. It's a little different map, but it is the same setting as Lego Marvel Superheroes.
But they also have like DC areas and stuff like that.
They're
right?
small little hubs, but they've done that in the past too, where it's like the New York City is where you spend most of your time. That's where it's got 150 gold bricks to find, 40 plus characters. The other ones have like 10 characters, 20 gold bricks. They're very small. Go to Asgard, you go to Hawkeye's farm.
Perfect.
I know you all wanted to go there and spend a lot of time there.
Do you build the tractor?
I did.
Can you
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Can you send Hawkeye out to pasture there?
You can.
Do they do a
just leave 'em
joke?
out there.
Do they do a joke where Thor steps on miniature Legos? Because in the movie he steps on the Legos. Remember the kids' Legos and he like kicks them under the table.
No, they don't do that.
Come on, Legos! Right? It's
So the one thing that part of the places where those Lego games will get tired for me a little is like, all right, Jurassic World. All right, we're going to play the Jurassic Park part. Okay, it's the part where Ellie goes and checks out the dinosaur poop. Okay, but in the movie, they cut away. What happened between after the dinosaur poop and her meeting up with those guys? Like, I feel like that's where they can get kind of tired for me, but I'm assuming with the superhero angle, retelling the Avengers, that maybe they're more exciting fill-in spots if they even try that at all.
Yeah, that's something I point out in my review is they do a better job than they have in most recent games of balancing the action and puzzles. So there is more combat. You are engaged in battles more where you don't feel you're going through this kind of filler material. But those sometimes it's shot for shot what they're doing in the movie. Like they are spot on with the action. And it's kind of cool to relive that. But then, like instead of getting shot with a bullet, you get hit with a plunger and it's like stuck on your face or whatever.
Perfect. What else do you need? Jokes, everybody.
So yeah, it's fun. It's a step down from the last Lego Marvel game, but I would say it's a step up from their most recent like Jurassic World. I would say, I didn't review that, but that was like a 6 for me.
Yeah, that was.
I don't
Did
remember
you
what I
review?
gave it. It was kind of low.
I think it was in the 6s. That was TT Fusion, which is the other studio, and this is Traveler's Tales, which kind of
This is TT Games, yeah. I'm so confused by all their
TT Games
names.
is like the umbrella larger thing.
No, I don't think there is a Traveler's. I think Traveler's Tales is the larger one, and it's TT Games and TT Fusion. isn't it?
Incorrect.
Okay,
It is
well, I'll
for
trust-
sure Traveler's Tales and TT Fusion.
I'll trust you
it's
on
two
it then.
separate things.
Okay.
So what's the weirdest thing to adapt? Because when I think of all the movies that are in this, Iron Man 3 seems like a weird one. Does it get into like his weird anxiety attacks and whatnot, hanging out in the wilderness?
It doesn't go into his anxiety necessarily, but it starts off with spoilers, obviously, but his home being destroyed. So you're playing through that whole thing with Pepper, you and Pepper trying to get out of this burning house that's collapsing and all that. And then it transitions to him out in the woods, out in the small town, like almost like Fargo or wherever he's at. And you're playing as the kid too, so it's Tony Stark,
sure.
and then you're playing as a kid who has like a pop gun or a cork gun or something.
Sure.
So yeah, it does get a little weird in that capacity. I was like, okay,
I could beat the entire game as the kid, you said?
yeah, you actually could.
Okay, all right.
You could play the
Sounds
entire
good.
game as the kid. If you
Done.
Free play. I started it last night, and I liked Lego Marvel superheroes a fair amount. Like Lego City Undercover is still my favorite, but starting it was a bummer. I'm getting more and more bummed out by the movie adaptations from Lego. Like I really like their original stuff. I think there's some fun stuff in there, and I think the writing is usually really, really good. And then in this, it's just like it's always that stilted, weird. Jurassic Park was the worst example of this because the audio was so rough that they had to pull out. But with this, they still like pull those movie quotes where it's like it's just those weird moments where it's all wacky and fun, and then like super straight, serious, weird sounding clip from Chris Evans, and then back to plunger jokes. It feels so disjointed for me. Even like you'll be punching around as Captain America, and then like they pull a quote from the movie where it's him going, "Let's go a few rounds. I'm just doing what needs to be done." And like all the other audio like dips down while those quotes are being read. It's just like trying to shoehorn any relevant quote from the movie that'll work in this random Lego battle. It just feels kind of gross to me.
Yeah. Well, and then you always hear like that those quotes happen like in an airplane. So then it's like suddenly there's like airplane noise.
Yeah.
Right.
And Lego Lord of the Rings had the same problem.
Yeah, I kind of like it because it adds some camp to it as well. Just I don't know, it's not high quality. It kind of fits that. But I like reliving these stories and seeing what they do with them. I think they're brilliant writers, like you said. Their stories, when they do it on their own, are great. But I also like what they do to existing narrative as well. Like I think they have a pretty good eye for humor.
I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, but do they get sound-alikes to kind of patch in some things?
They do.
Because
Yep.
they have like Robert Downey Jr. and then there's a quote of him being like, "I need to blow up that gate." It kind of sounds like him.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, that was from insert other Robert Downey Jr. movie.
Zodiac?
Yeah, thank you. Okay. I could not have blanked harder on other Robert Downey Jr. movies.
Yeah.
Chaplin.
Yeah, there's some sound alikes. They also get some of the main guys back. Obviously, you
really?
didn't get like Chris Evans and all that, but you have Agent Coulson. I can't remember the actor's name. Clark Gregg, something like that.
Yeah,
He's
what about
back.
Smolders?
Yeah, she's back. Okay. Yeah, there's a few that are in there. Stan Lee is brilliant in this.
Finally, a Stan Lee cameo.
Yeah, great. Good.
But he has a funny joke where like when you first
all
encounter
over
him,
it.
Yeah, he's like, "When are these gonna stop being called cameos and I can just be called an actor?"
That's pretty good.
But he's everywhere in the game, and he has audio all over it. So it's fun.
What did you end up giving it?
8 out of 10.
Sounds fair.
No, 7.75 out of 10. Sorry.
Sounds fair for what we've been talking about.
Going once, going twice.
7.74.
9.25.
Wait a minute.
Something
I love
else
you, Jonathan Blow.
is really weird to me with this game. Before we move on, just real quick, I don't think I've ever seen any other game do this, but in the main menu for this game, there is an icon for Lego Marvel superheroes. Like they're plugging the last game. Like, hey, if you like that, check this out. I can't think of another game where it's like at the title screen, they give you an option to be like, buy our last one. Eat it up, people.
Yeah, there's been some games that would have ads on them. Like they tried to do like the motion picture kind of like the DVD thing of having previews of other games.
Yeah, I
that kind of
guess.
died off.
Yeah.
But, I can't remember one recently that
It's a
did that.
weird choice and a weird game, but I'm glad it's still kind of fun to fly Iron Man around New York.
Yeah, it's
Turns
good.
out it's satisfying. Good. Cool. Real quick, I played a little bit of Lost in Harmony. I think we touched on it in the podcast a while back, but it is iOS. It's from like a designer who left Ubisoft, but he was a lead on Valiant Hearts, which is the Ubisoft World War I game, and then also sound designer on King Kong, most importantly. Beyond Good and
Nice.
Evil. He worked on some Rayman stuff. But he left Ubisoft, and he made this rhythm game on iOS where you're constantly dreaming. You're a guy on a skateboard hauling your girlfriend on your back. Things aren't going well for those two. So it's, there's a little bit of a story set up, but it's not too invasive. And then it just comes down to basically Elite Beat agents. But it seems pretty solid so far. It's a nice little rhythm game on iOS and comes from a good pedigree. Tim, have you been playing anything?
I'm still plugging away at Mario and Luigi Paper Jam.
Oh, yeah. How's that going?
You know what? The more I play it, I realize, it is more one of those games. Oh, really? And that's pretty good. Like, those are fun little games. But, even Dream Team, I think we touched on this a little bit, but, even Dream Team I started to wane a little bit. But
it dragged on for so long.
And thankfully, the big paper craft fights that are in Paper Jam, where it's just kind of like tank battle type things, aren't nearly as obnoxious and try to use the gyro of the 3DS like the Dream Team fights did, which were the last Dream Team fight with Giant Luigi was infuriating. You have to anyway, because of that motion stuff, it was so stupid. But so that stays out of the way. And I started actually tinkering around with the amiibo support stuff, which I know Kyle didn't really dive into very deeply, but I was curious about it because I have, of the small amiibo collection I have a Bowser, Mario, and a Yoshi.
Are they friends?
Mario and Bowser are not. Okay. They're on opposite sides of Shovel Knight. He kind of keeps them clear from each other. Anyway, so you can register them, and I had to delete my Mario Party 10 data off of them, which was
oh, that's rough.
You get it. Yeah, that was tough.
Yeah.
So I had to wipe that off of there, and. And then
poop on a shoe.
But the thing is they integrate, and I don't remember how much Kyle talked about this either, but they integrate this card system into the game after a little while and I think it's actually a pretty clever mechanic where you earn these star points and you get this deck of cards because, hey man, deck building's hot. And you'll have 3 cards available at once. One might be boost the attack power of your team, or deal 20 damage to all flying enemies, or recover some health, or bonus XP at the end of a fight, which okay, I'm going to bank that one for my next boss fight. And that's great because I shoot up 2 levels sometimes, and I like that kind of stuff. But if you register an amiibo, you scan on your amiibo, a Bowser will raise everyone's power. You can do it at the beginning of every battle. And it doesn't cost a turn or anything. None of that card stuff costs a turn. So if right now I borrowed some of the amiibos from the office, so I got my Peach sitting there, Luigi, Toad, the whole gang. I could just sit there, hit this amiibo button, and scan in every single part of member of the Mario family, and just be buffed, just crazy particle effects flying, and just power up, they're just going faster and stuff, and double luck and all this, and then put times 4 luck on top, double luck. It just stacks, and I can just trounce people. It kind of breaks the balance of the game.
And that's a thrill for you?
But it's kind of fun because this game isn't blowing my mind anyway. So it's not too tough for me. I've played a lot of these games at this point, no big deal. But anyway, it's kind of a novelty. But I don't use them for all of them. For a boss fight, I'll load everyone on. But Bowser plus 25% attack power, then I'll probably throw him on there.
So you're saying Nintendo wants you to buy amiibos? That's what it sounds like to me.
If I think about it, I guess maybe they want us to buy amiibos.
Wait, they're not penalizing you for buying a lot of amiibos?
No, it turns out.
It's not you take a break, you played for 2 hours. Stop buying so many amiibos. So I don't have a new 3DS. I don't have the 3DS the amiibo scanner. Can I use those cards at all? I've been playing a little bit of this game.
You can use the card system, but I don't think you can do the special character card stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think.
So you're cooler on this overall game than Kyle is.
What did he give it again? 8.75?
Yeah.
Yeah. This would probably be, me personally, be closer to an 8, a flat 8 or something like that. It's good. And I would recommend, especially if you hadn't played any of these games, it's solid. If you love Paper Mario, there's not a ton in there for people who adore Paper Mario, want more of that sense of humor and stuff.
Yeah.
That falls a little flat. And Paper Mario just feels like an extra dude in your party, kind of.
Yeah.
But man, I still if you've heard about these Mario and Luigi games, I still just say go back and play Bowser's Inside Story.
That was a good one.
It's so good. So anyway, that's still the crowning achievement of that.
What are you doing playing that instead of Final Fantasy VII for the game club?
I don't want to start playing Final Fantasy VII before I got 3-4 hours in front of me, and I just want to plow through it.
Clock's ticking. Next week we're starting our game club here.
I'll say I've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy VII.
You're a good boy.
I went a little crazy and played ahead, and I actually finished it.
I wanted you to wait. I know you're a stubborn guy, and you're I'm going to keep going.
I am going to keep going.
But when we're talking about Midgard next week, and you're like, who's Ares?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to... Yeah, I'm going to be real confused.
Aberlanche. I like those guys.
Aberlanche.
Yes. You're
question for you, Joe.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
How many times have you played Final Fantasy VII?
Oh, God. Yeah,
seriously,
it's a lot.
take a shot.
I mean, well, you know what? Actually, I don't. That's a game. If you ask me about Final Fantasy VI, that I couldn't. Like, I've played through that game probably 10 plus times.
Wow.
Final Fantasy VII is probably only 3 times through, but
Including this one?
You probably,
Yeah.
if I know you, you did like pretty much 100%.
yeah, but we're talking like exhaustive playthroughs each time.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like, I got the platinum trophy on this most recent one. Not that that's like a big, you can do it. But anyway, I played it a lot.
Before we move on from this, and this is a good opportunity to plug, like, hey, next week is the Game Club first session reflecting on the time in Midgar, but it's available on the PlayStation Store for $5, the PS1 Classic version. So this is not the PC port version we've been talking about.
Can you get that on your PS4?
Yeah, you can do PS1 Classics on your PS4. I mean, I looked in the store as of yesterday.
Okay.
I will.
Wait, I'm pretty
say-
sure. Hold on a second. Maybe I looked on my PC. But anyway, so maybe it's just PS3 and Vita.
It might
Could be. So double check. Anyway, if you have a PlayStation, check and see before you just blindly buy in the store. But it's $5 PS1 version.
I will put a plug in if you have the extra like $10 to play to like buy the $15 PS4 version. That has some amenities on it, like the ability to skip enemy encounters, the ability to turn on God mode if you want to, the ability to like speed things up.
Sure, that's great, especially if you're replaying it.
I highly recommend that. Yeah, especially if you're replaying it. That was like a lifesaver for me.
So
I'm playing the remake that's coming out later.
Oh,
Yeah.
You guys aren't in that one yet, huh?
Speaking of this,
Oh, man.
cool.
That's so neat.
Ben from France
Why
writes.
are you the best?
Ben from France writes, this is just, we're doing an email early. Hey
Ben.
guys,
Okay.
do you find it strange that quickly after getting irked over Final Fantasy VII news saying the remaster would be episodic, you almost immediately told all your listeners to play the original game episodically with you?
Interesting.
Which, no, I guess, you know what? I guess it's, just be like Joe and play ahead if you want, whatever.
Yep.
As long as you can remember the parts of the game that we're talking about.
Yeah, I've been taking so many notes. It's straight up gross how many notes I've
Yeah,
been
you
taking
already take a gross amount of notes, so.
on every day of my life, and now it's just boiled
You
down
really
for
do
all
take
7.
a lot of notes
Just
when
start
you
a
play
journal,
Oh
dude.
my god, nonstop.
I can't do
probably
it.
should.
Really? I only take notes when I review. That's it.
Oh, but what if you? It's the most satisfying thing. Like when you're going on a cover story trip, be like, oh, the last game this team worked on, the last game this developer worked on. I search my phone, like, what do I have here? And then it's just pages and pages of
Yeah.
very specific thoughts of like, this section was awesome, this sucked.
My Doom notebook, 23 pages from that trip.
Really?
Yeah. And we were there one day, right?
Wow.
23 pages of notes.
You know, you can use BFG just as an acronym. You don't have to write it out every time. It'll save you so much space.
And then the middle
I
word.
like
that
writing that middle word. It's
took
fun.
up an entire page with that one. It's pretty-
Also, special notes for the Game Club for anybody that's playing Final Fantasy VII on iOS. I'm really curious to see if anybody's doing that out there. So if you are, be sure to write in and let us
And
know.
why you're doing that.
well,
Yeah,
you could have
what's
it
the rest of
anywhere.
your life like? I really want to know what kind of miserable failure you
Where
are.
did things go wrong for you? Yeah.
I kind of know. I'm curious.
I'm really curious about it. Are you guys ready to move on?
Yeah, let's do
Yeah,
it.
let's do it.
All right, and emails, here they come.
Hello, welcome back to the Game Informer Show. It's time for the email jam here. We're going to jam out some emails that people sent to podcast@gameinformer.com.
Jam it to us.
Yeah. Oh, God jam it. Let's do it. So the first one here is, this one is from Kyle.
Hilliard?
No.
Jinx.
No.
Why don't you pay more attention to me?
Game Informer staff. I was just curious how you like to play older games. Do you like to go back and play them on the console they were launched on, wait for a possible HD remake, play on PC, or hope for Xbox One backward compatibility? I'm late to the whole Arkham series and would like to play them the first time in the series. What is your recommendation on getting this done? Thank you, Kyle. So first, let's handle his Arkham question. Is it PC or
just play everything on PC.
Yeah, PC on Arkham, for sure.
Yeah,
Best versions.
Yeah.
play the Arkham Knight.
Tim, you strike me as the type of guy that's like,
PS, don't play that on PC.
No, don't play.
PS4.
Oh, was he talking
Xbox One?
wait, you saying Arkham Knight or Arkham
I-
series?
Well, I
Arkham
mean,
Knight. The joke we were going for
I
was
got it.
that game is unplayable on
I
PC.
thought he wanted to play the entire series, though.
he
It's
does.
just-
He does.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know how the other PC ports are.
I think they're good. Yeah,
Yeah?
for sure.
Okay.
I played both of them on PC.
Sweet. There you go.
But you seem like the type of stickler that is big on like playing games on the original console. Like you'd never play. Like you certainly would prefer to hold like a Super Nintendo controller in your hand.
In
right?
a perfect world, I would have a old school TV set, like a tube set, and all my consoles all set up and ready to go. But like I don't have that kind of space. I don't have a room for a game room. So I'm just gonna. I've made peace with the fact that I'll have to recollect some systems and like. That's something to look forward to when I got like a basement or something to put stuff in. For now, though, I actually did consolidate down to a Retron 5, which outputs in HD, and you can still use original consoles and stuff
that's
like
true.
or
Controllers.
controllers. Yeah, so that's the way I do old games now. Otherwise, like a PS2 game, I still have a PS2 and all that, and yeah.
Yeah, Tim, I appreciate you wanting to be like a basement dwelling purist. I like that. I think that's super great. But man, having better resolution on games is so good. And then I'm also addicted to like these old games coming back with like trophies and achievements and all that stuff. I like those a lot. So I would prefer to play the newer versions, especially if it has the bumped up resolution. But again, the Super Nintendo controller feels so good when it's in your hands. And
And it really, for me, it really depends just on like what the better version is too. Like, I guess an example would be like talking about Final Fantasy VI again, is that like I spent a ton of time with the Super Nintendo version of that, but like my favorite version is probably the GBA version. So like,
interesting. Okay.
I'm going to go back and replay that because it has like some cool extra end game content and, you know, so, or I think also like with the case with Final Fantasy VII now, it's like, yeah, I like the original PS1 version, but like all the amenities on the PS4 or like on the PC version of that too is like, yeah, I'll just play that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a particular purist. I also don't have a whole lot of time to go back and play old games. I kind of, you know, try and stick with
that's the
what's on my
balance.
current slate too. Yeah.
I have that basement set up, the exact one that Tim's talking about, where I have like a CRT monitor.
Often you use that?
Not very often, especially because it's like -10 degrees down there right now. But during the summer, like it's cool to play old games and whatnot down there. But still, I'll always try and shoot for the highest resolution. Like I'm replaying King Kong right now, and it's like, well, I've got to go 360 version, which I've never played before. So
yeah, it can
360 version.
It can be a double-edged sword. Like sometimes it's cool because it's like, oh, you know, maybe I'm going to sell some old games or something, and you realize that like, oh, well, you know, this game's re-released on PC with higher resolution, or it's on a console that supports an objectively better controller or something. It's like, well, if I could play this without a GameCube controller, maybe that'd be better. I don't know. But then there's this double-edged sword where it's like, I want to play Valkyria Chronicles right now, but there's a new version coming out, so I should wait. Or even grosser, where it's like, God, I really could go for another like Mario Sunshine playthrough. It's like, God, is that just around the corner? Like,
the remake? I don't think it is. I think you're totally safe.
That last step is one that I won't do. Like I will wait. Like I've been meaning to replay Valkyria on PC. I own it. But then as soon as it became pretty certain, like that's coming to North America, and then they actually announced it was coming to North America, I'm like, I'm going to hold off on that replay until the next one comes. But if it's something like
theoretical,
if there's just like no whiff of it necessarily coming, I'm not going to be like, I'm going to hold off on that for 9 months. If I'm in the mood to play it and I have the time, I'll go and do it if it's available.
Fair enough. Good question. All right. This next one is from Tim from Indiana. Hello, GI Show crew. My question is quick, but it's one that comes up quite a few times for me personally, so I thought I'd ask it. Is Game Informer one words or two? If it's just one word, is the I capitalized? Thanks, and I love the show. Tim, it's 2 words.
2 words.
Except for in the logo where it's 1 word.
Yeah, it's a stylized logo, you know.
Blame the production department.
Or the website where it's oneword.com. But
but when you search it, search 2 words.
Yeah, it's a 2-word thing, 2 caps.
Yep. And
what's the deal with video games?
For us, it's 2 words. It's 2 words.
Never do it one.
Yeah, one looks weird. It looks like 90s, kind of like we don't even know how to talk about these things yet.
Like the headline of some sort of 90s video game magazine.
Just seeing video games all one word with a lowercase g just seems dirty to me.
But that's like weird. It was like videogames.com, which would redirect to GameSpot. Like that was my jam back in the day for getting the hot tips and whatnot. So it feels very natural.
Jam it.
This next one is off topic from video games. This one's from Mark from Surprise, Arizona. Is that real?
Ta-da!
Yeah. All right. Okay. Hey, GI crew. Let's have some off-topic fun. It even says it here. Quentin Tarantino movies or Steven Spielberg movies? Discuss.
Oh, Lord. Like, who's a better director?
I read the question verbatim.
There's not a lot of specifics beyond that.
Yeah. I mean,
Steven Spielberg.
Clearly Spielberg, but if a new movie's coming out, a new Spielberg movie, a new Tarantino movie, we'd all be more excited to see Tarantino's movie. I saw Bridge of Spies.
Didn't we?
What's that?
Didn't we see a new Tarantino movie and people weren't very excited about it?
Well, you didn't go see it.
I still can summarize what I've heard.
Yeah, I think people were excited. I don't think it blew doors down. It's one of his weaker films. I still think it's really good. I mean, as far as track record and like batting average, Tarantino by a mile. But as far as like legacy, you go Spielberg. But as far as excitement over his next project, I would go Tarantino.
I don't know. I
100% there with you, by the way. Although BFG looks,
I think
super
this is
cool.
like you have to like nuke one of them off the face of like all of history, basically. Like,
So they never happened.
yeah, I think you got to choose
Tarantino.
between those two.
Oh,
Like,
that.
Oh, well, you immediately lower Tarantino into acid. I mean, there's no debate.
it's like then Terminator 2,
Feet
but
first,
but
the
when
way
he
he
starts to
likes
do the
it.
thumbs up, you just speed up. The lower
This is a question where the specifics do kind of matter though, because if you're talking about like cinematic legacy and impact, that's one thing. But if you're talking about like if you're gonna sit me in a room with one director's catalog for a day and just say, well, you have to watch movies the whole day, I would actually choose Tarantino. I would rather watch Tarantino movies all day than.
Are we
Spielberg
talking
movies.
random Spielberg movies thrown in there?
No,
Can
no,
you
no.
choose?
You have the
You
whole
could
catalog.
pick the
You
whole
can
thing. Oh
choose.
man,
Is Color Purple in there?
What I love about
Yes.
Spielberg is that like the range is like there's so
Yeah.
much variety in there, and that's not to say Tarantino has a lot of variety too, but there are certain themes and the way his characters talk and interact and stuff that like they all taste like Tarantino, whereas like Spielberg, yeah, I think is a little more all over the place.
Spielberg, yeah, you're gonna have the Spielberg face, which is my favorite thing, which is people being shocked with like a beam of light coming on their eyes.
Okay.
If you just look on YouTube like a montage of
Reiner's got it,
Spielberg
yeah.
face. It's really funny. It's the equivalent of looking up like the trunk shot from Tarantino films, like
Okay.
the signature moments in there.
I'm into it. Well, that was a good
Also,
one.
I don't like how Tarantino says "all right" so much in interviews.
P.S. Loving the month of Doom coverage. So Reiner,
Hey, thanks.
pat on your
Nice
back.
work. Wrapping that up, by the way.
That's over now.
Yeah, done on Friday.
It's almost like next week we'll have something new to talk about. That should be kind of
Oh
fun.
man, that's big.
I promise it'll be a fun topic.
Half-Life 3.
Thanks. I'm sorry.
thanks.
This next one's not from Surprise, Arizona. This one is from Scott C. Says thank you for the show. I have a few questions for you regarding the relationship between your reviews and the developers and publishers of the games in question. And this is not going the direction you might think it's going to. Do you think that they set up meetings to discuss the game's reviews post-launch? Let's just do these one question at a time. Sure. I can say absolutely.
As a whole,
From what I understand of like that, my perception of that side of the industry, on the other side of the fence, like that, I understand there are studios that do that. I'm not saying all of them. I'm not saying like Jonathan Blow is gonna like download and print off every single
I could see, yeah.
witness review or something. But I think companies that make a business out of this,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure that like Ubisoft like does an internal review or whatever that they like get all of the reviews, make all of the different like points that people
Yeah.
talk about and talk about it.
yeah, they like on cover short trips they always talk about it. Like, yeah, with the last game, if it's a sequel, like a big negative that time around was this, so we knew we had to emphasize that. So clearly, like the message is getting out there. Like, hey, as a whole, reviewers and critics don't like this.
if those things came through in QA, they probably would have tried to fix them, or they knew that they.
I'm
came
sure they
through.
came through. Yeah, it's just a matter of, oh god, we got
do you have time
crank
for?
this
We,
out.
yeah, there's more to talk about, but let's do more. Let's do the next
Well,
question.
Reiner, do you have something? On
I
that?
was just gonna say, I bet
Who cares?
Reiner, I care.
Sorry, boss.
Yeah, little
this
rookie.
is gonna get broken on someone's head at some point.
Hanson's.
He's pointing to his
Probably
fist.
right still. That was a good diss, but it's probably still Hanson's face. But no, I've heard from publishers and developers that it's like a tiring amount of data that is gleaned from reviews. Like every review, every critic, data gets back to the publishers
bigger
and
the
the
game,
developers, and
you know.
they look at all this stuff. So I would do it if I made a game. I'd want to see it all.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
you'd be big on like searching Twitter for like every possible comment. It would drive me insane because I'm a comment. I'm obsessed with comments.
Here's the thing that like would drive me crazy though is like I see that as being useful if in a meeting you could be like, well, people really liked this, this, and this, but people didn't like this and this. But then you talk about like again, like using Assassin's Creed as an example, the most recent one in Syndicate, like, well, 40% of people really liked what we did in the present day, and 40% didn't, and 20% had no opinion. And
So let's
sort of
make
like-
it first person in a game studio.
Yeah. So, like that kind of thing. That how do you respond when,
Right.
like, I'm sure because there are so many people who write reviews, like the spread on those, like, it's just got to be so inconsistent on any given feature. People are going to like love or hate. And maybe there's somewhere more, I guess more the majority leans in one way, but like distilling that down into like usable information, I think has got to be super difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
And Joe started to go into something about like, you can imagine the most dense, crazy like Microsoft Excel spreadsheet that has like just tried to distill all this stuff. Like those things are out there from what I understand. And this leads into that, which is like, have you ever had suggestions from reviews implemented in later series entries, and saying that have we, like, that's, I think that he means, like, have we ever seen or heard of developers taking that information and trying to use it to improve games? And like, yeah, we've touched on that a little bit. I remember one of the more eye-opening moments was when I went to Square Enix to visit to see Final Fantasy 13-2, and it was like kind of a turning point for that developer, because it was the first time that they were really acknowledging openly, like, that I remembered, like, fan criticism, because like 13 was one of the more widely criticized. 12 would come out, and it's like there was a lot of, like, generally I think that was received as a very good game, and within the Final Fantasy community it gets a little bit more polarizing.
Yeah.
But
I think you're right in that 13 is probably the beginning of a more like divisive era in Final Fantasy.
yeah, and there was things in 13 too that were supposed to be direct responses to parts of 13. I don't know if I have a bunch of specific.
The linearity is a great
There
example.
you go.
in that. Yeah.
Yeah, where they went crazy in the other direction,
Yeah.
an insane time, like, and you see how people can rubber band, developers can rubber band in other directions, and that maybe is an example of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember like XCOM. I forget if it was Enemy Within or for XCOM 2, but the developers have been like, well, I remember Adam Beesener when he reviewed it. One of his big points was the lack of gun variety or something like that, or lack of customizability with the weapons. And they're like, oh, with the next one, blah, 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 you can customize that stuff.
Right.
I know.
So he's a weird specific call out.
Yeah, this isn't one that I think was a specific response to like our review, but I know that like the Dragon Age series, like Dragon Age 2, which was like one city but a few like isolated locations around it.
Yeah.
I feel like Inquisition and that sort of like sprawling areas that
Yeah.
where it's like a direct response to people feeling like, to the second game feeling a little like claustrophobic.
Right.
Totally.
So
He's got two more. I think these would go quicker than the other two. Do developers care more about their game, about how their game was received critically, or how it sold? And like that, I think that depends on what kind of developer you're dealing with. I think bottom line, everyone wants their game to make money.
Yeah. Do I want money or pride?
And like money, I think generally is a good across the board. It's not always the case. But like, I think generally if your game's selling really well, it probably means that it wasn't a complete turd.
Like
Like,
Jurassic World.
I don't know how the game sold. Did it sell really?
Gazillions.
Okay.
Gazillions.
Well, all right. So I guess there isn't a 1-to-1, but I don't know. I think they're considered differently, right? I don't know.
yeah, I mean, I think you want both, and when you get down to picking one or the other, like, I don't know how you do that. Like, I mean, Tim, would you rather your stories on the magazine, like on the website, get a lot of hits, or would you rather they're really well written and researced?
I thought top 10 pickup lines did really well back in the day, and I'm sure that's that exact scenario.
All I mean to say
Warcraft ones.
is that there's that that like a sense of like a job well done. I think is a combination of both of all of those things. And if you don't have a certain degree of both, there might be a sense of like disappointment about it.
I think generally most developers, I agree with Joe, and I think that a lot of developers and even publishers would think like, well, we focus on making a high quality game, and hope that your quality and hard work is rewarded with sales. But then that's where the term like critical darling comes from, where it's like, hey, everyone loved this, but like Valkyria Chronicles or something, obviously it was successful enough to be coming back now, but to my mind, or Bulletstorm, there's Bulletstorm.
Irrational games before BioShock.
Yeah, where it's just like these games are great, but they just don't move off shelves as much.
Yeah. I think that's, what's the guy's name? That
This
wrote
is Scott.
Scott, I think he might like the Darkest Dungeon interview coming up. It's a lot about that feedback and sales versus reviews and all that
Okay.
stuff.
Oh,
so.
cool.
And last one, do you think developers and publishers have a good idea of what score or awards their game will get before launch? And I think this is where it comes into some mock review stuff.
Yep, they do mock reviews.
Yeah.
All the big publishers do.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're surprised, and it can swing a different way than those mock reviews. I'm trying to think of a good example where like you hear that the mock reviews were much lower than there's one recent I forget.
But I mean, like what publishers will do is like hire people like us, but who don't work for outlets anymore,
Right.
To
Yeah.
like come and do what we do, just like on
Like
content.
Adam Sessler or something like that.
Yeah.
Didn't End guy go into some of that?
He's a consultant, yeah. Even Jim Riley from
Jim
Game
Riley
Informer did a lot of that stuff.
That's
Yeah.
true. So anyway, Scott, good question there. This is another big one, but John from Chicago. Cool podcast dudes. Favorite cereal? This may seem
great question.
This may seem straightforward at
This is
first,
good.
but I struggle with this question a lot. I'm a big fan of some underrated gems like Special K Red Berries and good old Honey Nut Cheerios,
Nice.
and find Cocoa Puffs and some other well-loved milk crunchies less than stellar. So what is your favorite cereal? Has it changed since you were younger? Thanks, guys. Means a lot to me. John from Chicago.
That is a big question.
I know,
This is tough. So yeah, younger, you're stupid. You go like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, stuff like that, which is still good, but you get a more refined palate. But I think of like college, like at the University of Minnesota and the dorms, we just had all cereal. And so it's a matter of what do I want every morning. And I gravitated towards Special K with red berries.
Oh,
I
wow.
agree with him. Underrated.
He speaks to you, John. From
Very
Chicago.
satisfying. Runner up, I will give Crispix with a little bit of sugar sprinkled over it. And beyond that, Quaker Toasted Squares. Big fan of.
You're the
I
worst.
know they
You're the
sound
problem
boring
with
and
the cereal
adult.
industry.
Stuff like Raisin Bread. It's
ate
good,
those.
you know?
I ate those, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Lucky Charms. Right now, like
What are you, 4?
I seriously,
Reiner,
well, 4 years old.
I almost eat a bowl a day. I kid you not. Like I will go home and have a bowl of Lucky Charms.
That's
for
the most
dinner.
telling thing I've ever heard about you. Just have Lucky Charms marshmallows wedged in your old
It's
teeth.
delicious. It's the best.
Your baby daughter reaches up and slap her hand away.
I
It's
won't
like,
give
no.
her any. No, she's too young.
Has this been a lifelong crusade with Lucky Charms?
No, like I would say I went through Fruity Pebbles and Captain Crunch with Crunch Berries phases. But I love sugary cereal. Like still today, I think it's amazing.
It is. It's
Like
super.
when you dissed Cinnamon Toast Crunch, it like crushed me.
It's good. I just
It's
think you
still
grow
great.
out of it a
No,
little
it's
bit.
still great.
You're gonna burn out by bowl 3. Let's be honest.
Yeah. And we're looking for the long haul
That's
here.
right.
My answer to this really does show how old of a man I am. I think Cracklin' Oat Bran.
I thought you were gonna go with grape nuts.
No. Oh, man, grape nuts are also fantastic.
You want some milky gravel?
my weird thing with and that's actually so my weird thing with cereal. I don't have milk with cereal. I don't drink a lot of milk.
What?
So like
Well,
my,
the older you get, I think you realize you want that crunch.
so my experience. No, I mean like I've never had milk with cereal. So like my experience with cereal is generally like 100% different than anyone else's.
Well, you just shove your hand in the box? Like a,
I just like pour it out in a bowl and like eat it with a spoon, but it's just dry.
have you ever tried milk?
A couple times. I don't like it.
Have you tried almond milk?
Oh, it's the best. No, don't do almond milk.
No,
it's good. Almond milk is great.
No. It's largely a texture thing. I don't like the mixture of like the crunch and like the liquid doesn't do it.
What
for me.
about those weirdos that eat, I don't know if you've encountered this, but they eat cereal with yogurt?
I do that.
That makes sense.
Joe's one of
That's not
those.
weird. You know why that's not weird?
Why?
Is you've seen like a yogurt parfait, right? What is
Yeah.
that? It is milk and sugar and crunchy stuff.
Yogurty gravel.
Which is just essentially cereal, but it's more viscous.
Can you do regular milk or do you just have to do almond milk?
I have to do almond milk.
I want
My
to touch
stomach's
on.
super sensitive.
I want to touch on almond milk here with my answer here, which is
Please.
like the legacy ones are like Cookie Crisp was a huge one for me. All the marshmallowy ones. Actually, when I was a kid, I'm still not a crazy morning person, but I'm more of a morning person than other people. I would get all the cereal that we had in the shelf and put it around me like a little fortress, so no one could look at me in the morning.
Totally.
And it's
Same
just
thing.
like I'm going to be in my little cereal fortress and don't talk to me. So that was my strategy. As I grew up, I became a little bit more health conscious.
A little bit.
So, but this is silly because like Honey Nut Cheerio it's got a picture of a heart on the box, right? And I'll never have a heart attack. Okay. But it's still got like, 9 or 10 grams of sugar. So it's not amazing to eat 3 bowls, but relatively still delicious.
Yeah.
My daddy ate it. So, hey, I'll eat what daddy's having.
Dead at 45.
Anyway, I miss you, Dad. My dad's alive as of this recording, and but the other thing is, again, as you get older, harder to justify cereal because most of it's very sugary and almost all of it is empty carbohydrates. And if you're just going to fill up on carbohydrates, like it's just there's not a lot to be gained there, especially for a meal in the morning. Like I'm not trying to break anyone's mind or be some like healthy fuddy-duddy or anything. There's not a lot to be gained in most cereals.
Except your tongue is satisfied.
That's
your
it. That's
stomach's
it. Well,
full.
that's what I'm not saying. I'm saying like nutritionally. Okay, that's it. Dude, all right. That's
Go
not
back to your food
boring.
pyramid.
Anyway, but almond milk is where it ties in with that because one, if you're lazy, almond milk lasts for like 3 months, so you can like have it in your fridge and make that box last longer and stuff like that. And also, it's like 30 calories a cup instead of like 90 or over 100 for regular milk.
Does it help your bones? Because I haven't
Milk is
drank milk for a long time. I don't know if my bones are going to crumble.
Basically, milk is a vehicle for cereal, unless you're Joe Juba, where you've ascended beyond that.
Then dust floating around the room is the only vehicle for cereal.
That's why I say you can eat more with almond milk and not feel bad about all the calories. But that's assuming you even care about calories. I'm not saying everyone does.
Can I tell a dumb
Just eat
cereal
what you
story
want.
real
Just
quick?
eat what you want. Seriously.
America does a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, just do it.
Here's my dumb cereal story. There was a time, like a couple years ago, when I had this ridiculous craving for one of my favorite cereals from when I was a kid, which was s'mores. I don't know if you guys ever had s'mores.
yeah.
It's kind of like Golden Grams,
remember.
except it was a little chocolatey and it had like those little hot chocolate marshmallows in them. Anyway, So I actually went to my grocery store. This is me as like a grown-ass man being like, I want to buy some sugary s'more cereal, and was super surprised and disappointed to not find it on the shelf anywhere.
Oh, no.
So they're in the store. I was looking it up on like Wikipedia. It turns out like they have not sold this s'more cereal since like 1997 or something.
No.
And I just assumed it would be there, and I was kind of sad.
Did you go on eBay?
No, I'm not going to eat.
It was.
No, I'm not.
It
doing
was like
that.
Golden Grams with like a little bit of extra to it. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
It had a little
Yeah,
bit
it
more
was
going.
solid.
Yeah.
I remember being disappointed by Reese's Puffs, but then being like, I got you guys. I'm going to do this better. And getting Cocoa Puffs and peanut butter Captain Crunch and just making my own by doing.
I thought you were going to say Cocoa Puffs and Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
No.
That would be another good
That'd be
option.
pretty good. Yeah.
Tim and I know somebody that works at General Mills because it's based out of Minnesota here, and he's in the
Pete,
marketing
our friend
department.
Pete.
Yeah, Pete. But we pitched him a gazillion cereal ideas. One of them is they have archives of like all the old cereal commercials. I'm saying make a 2-hour cut of like 70s, 80s, 90s, the best General Mills commercials.
Yeah.
Put it in the theater. I would see that, or at least
Everyone
put up,
saw
like,
that coming.
or at least put it up like a Twitch channel that's just like you know
Yeah.
like Nickelodeon when they have like 90s Nickelodeon running. Everybody lost their mind.
Yeah,
Everybody would be super into
I'd do that. I would not go see. I would not go see commercials in the theater.
Oh, I would.
I know you would.
Yeah, it'd
I
be
would- I
like
would
a,
also.
a
That's why we-
shameful porn theater where
But
no one
also
makes eye
give people
contact.
mini boxes of cereal as they enter, and
Yeah.
you can eat them without milk, and the Jubas will show up. and-
Yeah.
Also, please tweet at this Pete guy at Pete BASGEN because he's the man who can make a new Chex Quest happen.
Oh, that's true. He's also funny.
That's true.
Yeah, and like
please
games.
let him know that we want new Chex Quest.
Nude
a
Chex.
nude
Nude
Chex
Chex
Quest.
Quest.
Did
Yeah,
I
man.
stutter?
That's right. Get your hot phlegmoid action in there.
All right.
How much time we got?
One more.
Okay, gotcha. Well, real quick, this isn't going to count, but Mitchell wrote in saying he wanted to play Dead Space, but he's worried about where to start because he heard that the second one's better than the first Dead Space. And he's like, well, if I had just started Uncharted with the first one, he might not have been enticed to continue onto Uncharted 2.
It's not to that level.
But it's not. I think Dead Space 1 ages super well.
So good.
It actually, I think it really depends on what appeals to you most about Dead Space. Like if you want something that's a little more like old school, old school Resident Evil, right? Like a little more horror focused, do the first one. And if you want something that's a little less on the horror and a little more on the like shooting and the action,
It's Alien versus Aliens.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
And so yeah, I think you should play all of them. But yeah,
Extraction.
Start with one.
But and you can't go wrong either way.
No.
I would say like I don't think it's a case where it's like as I'd say with Uncharted, where I think the second one is just sort of an improvement in every way.
Where there's going to be mechanical improvements and you're going to be ruined on the earlier
Yeah.
entries. Or
I
something.
think Dead Space 1 and 2 are just different, but both of them
Agreed.
would be good
Why?
places to start.
Why don't we have a new gen HD collection of those 3 games?
It's a really good question.
yeah, I mean, Visceral.
they look great.
maybe after Battlefield Hardline they could start working on that, but like
And it would make
in
sure
theory
that-
the Star Wars game is taking up a lot of the resources.
Anything they can do to make sure that like the co-op for Dead Space 3 continues to live, because I'm just counting down the days until like they shut down that part of the game and it's just like, well, hey, that doesn't exist anymore.
And then forever you're going to be like, I was right. You won't get to test it. Moving on.
That's right. 9.75 to my grave. All right. I'll never back down from that. Liam from Wilmington, North Carolina says, hi, GI crew. Hope I get Reiner.
Hey!
Love the podcast. Keep springing out those good vibes. Hey! My question is, do any games stick out to you that you played the hell out of, but only because of a side mode and not the main game? For the interest of time, Liam brings up Resistance 2's 8-player co-op mode, which Resistance 2 is crazy with side modes.
8-player
Wasn't there like
co-op?
256 player multiplayer?
Yeah,
or
they just
something?
went
And-
nuts with the numbers.
In Resistance 2?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was insane.
It was like 60.
oh, sorry,
Yeah,
maybe
you're
it was
thinking of
60 or
Meg,
80.
I think, Tim.
Yeah, that's me.
It was 60 player.
I was
yeah.
thinking of Meg, everybody. Anyway, I don't know if you guys have one for
I
this.
do. I definitely do. It's a little old school, but you guys remember the Oregon Trail?
I vaguely recall that.
I know where you're going.
Had a hunting game in
Yeah.
where you'd like have to go and like shoot buffalo. I mean,
Press
it-
8.
Yeah, it looked terrible on the old like Apple IIe.
Played
by
like
modern
Atari's Combat.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
but man, I was so into like me and all of my friends in like elementary school would like go to the computer lab and you just like start up as the banker every time, load up with as much ammunition as you could carry, and then just like instantly go hunting.
because the
And-
banker had more cash.
yeah, the banker had more, and then you just like, yeah,
I love the idea of it's like a banker and his family being like, we need to go west. We're going to starve here. There's no opportunities here. It's like, don't worry, Martha. I got us covered. Cashes out everything. Liquidates the entire fortune of the family, and they are just dying of dysentery as he's just game hunting and leaving corpses to rot.
Yeah, they get 5 miles out of town, and then there's just an area kill. Of,
There's so many upside down buffaloes with the legs sticking straight up in the air.
We can't move because we're too filled with bison meat.
Yeah.
I like how every once in a while too, the animals would run super fast.
Oh, yeah,
like, maybe
yeah.
like decent speed. Then everyone else was like, "Ring!" It's like a buffalo's across the screen. It's like, what the hell? I remember my friend made the joke. He's like, it's like the school got more electricity that day. Like no one knows why those animals were just
It probably
supercharged.
did have to do with like the computer's processing or
And
something.
we are talking about like improbably, like not just like, oh, that animal's moving a little fast. They would like zip across the screen.
Right,
It's
right.
Just like imagine like an old frontier being like, oh my god, like what do they got out here?
It's my
Yeah.
new god.
Anybody else for this one?
So it's like so what's the
Just a
touching
side mode.
modes,
It's
yeah.
definitely not the main attraction.
I
of
would
the
say
game.
Mass Effect 3's multiplayer.
Okay.
Well,
is-
that's not the main attraction.
It's pretty awesome. I
mean-
like, yeah, the main attraction is the game is amazing itself, but we spent so much time, and that was I'm bringing this one up because it was kind of surprisingly great.
I mean, but
Right.
you beat Mass Effect 3, so it's
Nobody anticipated a multiplayer experience that kicked ass in an RPG.
I
like
still
that.
haven't
Yeah.
played that ever.
you should
Oh,
play it.
we played the living hell out of
Yeah,
that.
I played a lot.
I mean, the go-to for me is obviously Drive San Francisco. I like that story
yeah,
mode a lot
that's
too,
great.
but the split screen tag mode is like it's my new religion. Also, like Battle Block Theater, there's a basketball mini game in there. I think is super fun.
Oh, yeah, I remember you talking
Whereas the
about
core
that.
game wasn't too
what
crazy
about,
about.
was the Burnout game? Was Crash mode like a side mode in that, or was that the?
It was just
thing?
one of many activities.
Yeah, I guess what I'd say is like the Crash mode stuff in like I don't even remember what else was in Burnout. I only played the Crash mode.
Well, then you're gonna love. What was that Crash mode focus game they released? Remember, like the downloadable Burnout?
no,
Oh,
Was
the
that-
overhead one.
yeah, I
what was
checked
that
it out.
called?
It was it didn't have the
Burnout
same,
Crash maybe or something like that.
Because like
right?
part of the appeal of that isn't just like, oh, look at the numbers in the Crash. Like it was the 3D like,
Right.
oh, look at the physics as that's crashing. And
Look
like,
at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
I think I've brought up before, but like there's just like a free range mode in like the ATV Off-Road Fury games, and that was before there was like a lot of free like open world co-op stuff you could do on a console. So just like tearing around playing tag on ATVs with friends in a big open world and like driving to the edge of the map, and then you just like the way they handled boundaries in that game when you hit the invisible wall is like you just sort of like ragdoll slingshot back away from it like comically, and so that was a lot of fun, and I didn't really touch the main mode at all.
Yeah.
I don't even know why I bought that game.
I remember doing that with like a dirt bike game on PS1.
Yeah.
Yeah, same idea.
So these are good emails this week. I like these. Some are off the beaten path. But who do we think is the email of the week?
There was one that got our blood pumping, made us want to jam. And Cereal Man? Is that fair?
I was going to lean towards Scott's questions about like what happens with reviews after we're done with them.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's
I
my
like
vote.
that one.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
not
but
to discount
cereal.
the cereal
I like
one.
Liam calling me out. That was cool.
You know what? And we try to encourage insight. Like it was an interesting angle on our normal questioning.
Yeah.
Like it was a unique question. So
The off-topic stuff is interesting too.
Yeah,
like
keep it
that's,
coming.
that's a lot of fun to answer. But and like that, yeah, I like the review one. That was
yeah,
thoughtful.
Thanks,
okay,
reviews
so
editor.
thank you, Scott. And also, as with every week, you can email us at podcast@gameinformer.com. If there's one thing I don't see, we see a lot of great questions, and we're getting some good game club topics coming in. But if there's something I don't see in our inbox, it's questions that are based off like modern, like recent headlines or big news or whatever. And since we don't have a news segment, again, like if you want us to talk about something or something's interesting to you, ping us in an email, and you might improve your chances of getting picked if it's something it wasn't big enough to talk about. So,
But this week we're going to ship out the winner one of Joe Juba's lenses.
that's right. We're gonna get one of his lenses from his glasses and sign that. We're gonna sign it before you take the lens out, so you have to deal with that for a couple days. But
Gotcha.
and we'll send you a little thank you for sending an email of the week. So
There it is. Cool. Be sure to stick around. We're going to be talking to Chris and Tyler, the lead designers behind Darkest Dungeon, which is a game that Dan Tack loves. And it's on PC now, going to be coming to PS4 soon. So stay tuned for that chat.
yeah, thanks.
Chris and Tyler, welcome to the Game Informer Show.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys have just launched Darkest Dungeon. It is out of early access. It is in people's hands, and a lot of people like Dan Tack sitting here are madly in love with it. So
It's a
congratulations.
one-sided love. The game doesn't maybe feel the same way about
No,
it.
the game definitely doesn't feel that way, and that's definitely something I want to talk about today when we get to that whole discussion about difficulty.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
that's
it's kind of hard to believe it's been a week. We launched Tuesday, and there's support and a lot still going on, and
gosh, all the days are blurring together. So
do you guys still love the game at this point?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I'm actually quite proud of it. I think like it's certainly not a perfect game, and no game really is. But there's a lot of love that got put into that game, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And I played it. I started a fresh campaign on Tuesday morning, and just played it for a couple hours, and you kind of get to know it as a member of your team. You know, it's its own thing, and yeah, I got feelings for that game for sure.
I like the idea of you going in and writing a Steam review for the game then.
yeah.
No, that would be very inappropriate.
Yeah. I think it's been nice to, there's been a lot of ups and downs throughout just everything, and to push, to exit early access and go into full release and start seeing the coverage on it and see the kind of experiences people are having. For all the work that we have done and still have, some work left to do in certain areas, we're trying to take the moments to reflect a little bit and enjoy like seeing the stories and things like that. So
yeah,
it's interesting because like the game started with Tyler and I talking about these anecdotes of like, an abusive healer or, a paranoid, knight. And so to see that come full circle in a lot of the coverage speaks anecdotally about this journey that the game takes you on. And that's been really fascinating because it really did kind of come full circle from inception all the way to kind of wrapping it up.
Yeah. Well, the reason we got you on the show is I think Dan Tack was on the podcast last week raving about it. And I asked the basic question of like, who the hell is Red Hook Studios? Who are these guys? What have they done before? And we're like, we don't really know. So who the hell are you guys? Where are you guys coming from in the industry here?
it's a mystery.
Well, I've worked in video games for about, 14 years now in Vancouver, just kind of bouncing around between single A to triple A. I don't know how many A's are appropriate to use anymore.
In Canada, many.
Yeah.
That's good. Good stuff.
That's so bad.
I'm an American living in Canada. I'm allowed to say these things.
But yeah, I just did a bunch of jobs ranging from, art lead, art director. I've worked at propaganda studios. I worked at Backbone in and around. And that's where I actually got to know Tyler. And we always sort of hit it off, and we had good respect for each other's skills. And we always sort of said, one day we're going to do something together. One day we're going to do something together.
Yeah, we feel like he comes from an art background. I come from a design background. And we thought, if we couple these together, it's like peanut butter and chocolate potentially. So, but it started with Chris and I, and then we assembled a team also of veterans, from people we've worked with in the past in Vancouver and stuff like that. And so we're able to kind of put that together, and that's really what Red Hook is. So it's our first game as Red Hook, but I've been working in games. I started in like pen and paper, kind of cheap ass games, knockoff style, like board and card games in '99. And then Chris and I met at Backbone. And so we've done a bunch of games, at different companies, but never really had the chance to come together like this and do something that was like 100% our own creative, creative, not just idea, but like direction that we wanted to accomplish. And that was we actually set out not to form Red Hook. I think is kind of an interesting point. We set out to make Darkest Dungeon, and then of course it makes sense, you got to kind of found a company and sorts of those things, but I think coming at it from a standpoint of not, hey, let's make a company and do whatever it takes to make the company survive, but rather let's make this game, like that's been our driving force. And then in doing so, that's created the company and allowed that to become something that will make more games.
Do you guys have a studio then, or are you spread all over the world?
We're distributed right now. We had a studio for about a year. We were working out of a shared space. But then for the last, almost the last year, we've been sort of working from home. And I have a home studio, and everybody sort of has their own sort of separate arrangement. But, that's the benefit of working with people that that you trust, and that have had some experience, is that, we never once had a problem of like people mainlining Netflix instead of getting their work done. So it was great to work with people that you trust, and they know what's up and they know what's expected of them, and so we're really blessed that way.
Yeah.
I want to call out a couple things from each of your backgrounds, if the internet's to be believed. Chris, I read that you worked on that Pirates of the Caribbean game that didn't come out.
Yeah. Not only did I work on it, I went to E3 and like presented it, and
it looks so cool. Everyone was so excited for that thing.
It was that was a tough one, man. Like working in games, you have to expect a certain chance, just like in Darkest Dungeon, of getting crit really bad, of getting like laid off
and not finishing not finishing the quest.
Yeah. So that's happened a couple of times. It's just kind of par for the course. But Pirates of the Caribbean was shaping up to be a really cool game, and we had a lot of freedom. It was almost like Fable. We had our own art style. We were going to do that on the ship kind of combat like the Assassin's Creed game, but it was going to come out before that, so we were all excited about that. So yeah, that was rough for sure.
I was green with envy at first because Chris and I were at Backbone, and we left Backbone Entertainment within like a week of each other and went to different companies. And I remember when you went to Propaganda, you went straight to Propaganda, right? And I love Pirates. Like my favorite game of all time is Sid Meier's Pirates, like on Commodore. And I remember like just being like, oh my God, you landed like in a dream company, and then
I was like, yeah, I did.
And you drew Pirates for 3 years, and and then they pulled the plug. That thing was so close to done.
It was about 6-8 months from being
there. Oh my God. Was it a little bit satisfying then? Because you always hear that they repurposed a lot of that tech and some of the design for the Disney Infinity playset for Pirates of the Caribbean. Did that come through? Could you see like some gems of your work shining through there?
I didn't check it out, to be honest with you. I heard those stories. I even heard stuff that like the Assassin's Creed game, there was something around that. I have no idea. I just kind of, my son was born a week after I got laid off, so I sort of had to like not worry about what was going to happen with Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, but Tyler,
yeah,
I want to talk to you about Age of Kings on the DS.
All right, cool.
I'm an Age of Empires fan. I know Dan's an Age of Empires fan. And that was one of those things that was like, well, what? This is a weird release, just a turn-based version of Age of Kings on the DS. And you check it out, it's like, oh, it's actually surprisingly good. So congratulations for pulling that off, man.
Yeah, that's funny. I think one of the, I think it was GameSpot that gave us like a most surprisingly good award or something like that. And yeah, I mean, I actually love that, but it was, I think, for a lot of people, a potential recipe for disaster. Like, wait, you're taking this RTS franchise and you're cramming it on this new platform that is untested and has all this cool novelty, but like, it just doesn't seem like a fit, and it was an awesome project. I feel really lucky to have worked on it. I kind of like that was my first video game project, and I was kind of put in a corner alone. They're like, hey, can you like take Age of Empires and kind of make it like Advance Wars, just cram those together? And I had so much fun working on that game. Like and I'm still quite proud of it. And I love when people bring it up because it's old now, right? That's like 11 years old or 10 years old or something. So it remains a game that I actually keep meaning to go back and play, which oddly is not true of everything you work on, for sure.
Did you experiment at all with making it real time?
No, it was never the goal. It was always to take kind of the awesome game loop of like Advance Wars and convert it. So yeah, it was not something we prototyped or experimented with. And I think it was the right decision for the device. I mean, so coming in, that's one of the reasons I got put on, is just the board game background. And so it was like a dream project, history plus turn-based tactics. And Wikipedia like was my friend for months there as I'm like researching all these people and going to the library and reading all these books. So it was fun.
What's the range on a trebuchet? How's this going to work?
Yeah.
Did you work on the Age of Mythology version as well then?
No, and this like remains perplexing to me in every way. I guess it's 10 years later, so you can air some dirty laundry. But we did that game and it was received really well. And then we had ideas for Age of Mythology, but they gave it to another studio within the same like larger corporate entity.
Okay.
And the oddest thing about it is never once did anyone even talk to us or our team and be like, hey, like. It's just they took the tech and they gave it to the other studio and that game was made. And nothing to knock what they've done with it. I would have killed to do Age of Mythology.
Because it's a better game than Age of Empires 2? Is that what you're saying?
It's just a cool, more to do in terms of okay, there's like Medusas like turning your units to stone and stuff like that. So just cool ideas.
Yeah, for sure.
And Chris, actually, a fun anecdote is Chris did the cover art of Age of Kings DS.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we didn't work on
I forgot about that.
The project together, but so that was our first collaboration.
Wow. So you mentioned Pirates a little bit, Tyler. Are there other big games that you think informed each of your design sensibilities growing up that are like the big milestones in your life?
Oh yeah, I mean, just Ultima 5, Pirates, Below the Root. It remains this like game that I just absolutely loved on Commodore. That was based on this like Zilpha Keatley Snyder books, which I never have read, but the game was amazingly moving. We both have played a lot of like the classic RPGs. So for me, that's like Bard's Tale, Ultima, Might and Magic, Gold Box, all that stuff, for sure. Like those were huge. And then Sid Meier is, I just think he's my favorite game designer, and I think I've met him in passing, as in like heard his GDC talk and shook his hand, but that remains like one of the people in the industry I most want to meet, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So
meaningful way.
a lot of Western RPGs, and that was both your upbringings.
Yeah, I favored like Eye of the Beholder 1 and 2, Pool of Radiance, that kind of stuff. Thief 2, I think, remains for me like the greatest experience I've had, like end to end in a game. And I think that's where I kind of got really sucked into like kind of world building as a part and parcel of the gameplay, because the narrative just didn't beat you over the head, but by the same time you started to learn and understand how the world was supposed to work and your place in it. So that was a big one for me.
Nice.
I think Darkest gets called a JRPG all the time, and it's kind of funny because I actually played almost no JRPGs.
I played Phantasy Star on my Sega Master System. Yeah. Phantasy Star 1.
Yeah.
So that's where all that influence is flowing into Darkest Dungeon. It's pure Fantasy Star.
Exactly, Fantasy Star. Just shoehorned
He's
in.
been wanting to remake it.
Dan, do you know why people call JRPGs out for Darkest Dungeon?
I think they're looking at some of the more like the JRPG dungeon crawlers, as opposed to like the Western dungeon crawlers, like wizardry and stuff. They're just looking at that whole room to room sort of exploration,
like Etrian Odyssey
building the
type
map.
of thing.
Yeah, like Etrian Odyssey. Which is of course a JRPG.
Right.
So stuff along that lines. I think that's why they're making the link.
And the side-on, I mean, it does look, there's elements of like Final Fantasy in terms of like, I think if you look at it purely as a side-on, but like our inspiration was almost, I know for a fact, like Bard's Tale, things like that, the idea that your first 4 heroes can melee attack and your last 2 heroes can only do ranged. And then we just kind of presented it graphically in a way. And so it's not knocking into the JRPGs, it's just kind of like, you might expect that we were just like jamming on those all the time. And it's more Western that influenced us.
And we like the idea of those big, juicy character sprites. Like we wanted to get right in close. We wanted the game to feel really claustrophobic. And because you're supposed to sort of identify with these little guys, which makes when you lose them even more heartbreaking, we didn't want to look at like the tops of heads in an ISO grid or, like that zoomed out overworld JRPG style map where you have the little tiny guy. We wanted to keep you like right up in their face so you could kind of get to know the contours of the line work and kind of starts to feel a little familiar.
Yeah, you get to appreciate the art a little bit more. It's all there.
And it's more fun. Honestly, for me, it's more fun to draw bigger. Like, I don't want to do pixel art, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Not knocking pixel art. I'm not that guy.
Sure. So many people have fallen in love with the gameplay of Darkest Dungeon. I'm wondering, in your guys' experience working on this project, what's the secret to good game design? What'd you guys learn throughout the course of this project?
Well, I actually think that's interesting because we do some things in Darkest Dungeon which would be normally regarded like horrific in terms of what modern, like, we take control away from the player. Like when your heroes get afflicted, they do stuff you didn't tell them to do. We don't let you choose when to save. And those aren't even things that I would say, those aren't like part of our design philosophies or anything like that. We were trying to put the right mechanics in the right game, if that makes sense. And so to me, good game design is like making the product do, whatever its pillars are that you decided creatively are important, and whatever experience that you're wanting people to have is finding a way to execute on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think we worked together at the very inception of the project, and we were, like I mentioned, those anecdotes that we would have, and we sort of worked outward from that kind of narrative to build something where the mechanics and the art and the audio and everything was fused together to tell the same story. Like they're all part and parcel. They're all selling the same experience. And like Tyler said, some of the decisions we made, you can't make them on another project, but for this project, they were the right move. Definitely the permasave and some of those things where it's like strings of bad luck happen. Well, it's Lovecraftian. It's supposed to be dark. Like we need to pay that out somehow. And so we're going to break a few rules to do it. So I don't know about how to make, like, what the secret of game design is, but the secret for Darkest Dungeon was just being committed to paying out the things that we said we were going to do.
Yeah. And Dan, you never found it frustrating?
I actually have a related question. Is Darkest Dungeon a game designed to be beaten? Is it like a game you're supposed to win?
Yeah,
because,
yeah.
I mean, it was a really rough ride for me, and I can see a lot of people who I've gotten into the game. You know, they get through the apprentice tier levels very easily. Then they get to veteran and beyond, and like I just can't see them ever making it through the actual darkest dungeon, which is just such a jump in difficulty in comparison to everything else that it's sort of a jarring, like, I got the sense that you didn't really care if I beat the game or not, and and it's okay to lose.
It's like hard to get. Like, balance is always going to be, it's going to work for some people and less so for others. But, we wanted a little bit of that hard to get vibe where it's like, the game wants to appear outwardly like it doesn't want you to beat it, so that when you beat it, you feel like you got one up on it. But we put a lot of care and love into that final boss, and
absolutely,
we want people to experience it for sure, because I think it actually it's the bookend on the other side of the experience. So
yeah, and that level 3, well, I guess the veteran wall, the mid-tier quests. So there's 3 tiers of quests, not counting the darkest dungeon. I would say some of that's intentional, that wall that you hit, and some of it is still maybe a little bit or has been a little bit harder than we intended it. And in fact, like running up to launch, we made a couple tune downs in that area. So like the press build that you got a few days before launch was still a bit harder in that regard than what the current build is. And we're going to still probably look at that. We have some telemetry and metrics in the game. We'd like to, because we don't intend, there's already a big learning curve when people come to the game, and some people die in the tutorial and they're like, holy crap, like, what am I gotten into? And that's all intentional. And then the first missions seem almost like people just, they're like, I couldn't complete my first quest. Like, what is this? And we're like, no, that's intentional. We're trying to teach you that sometimes you got to run.
Running away is a win. That could be
absolutely.
a win.
Yeah, but we don't intend you then when you go to veteran level to like be spun off of the game. So, it's a balancing act of trying to constantly make you feel uncomfortable, and I'll always make you feel a little bit like you're in over your depth. But at the end of the day, we want you to then realize, no, you're not. Like, you can do this, and if you prepare right and bring the right party comps, you'll do it. And so, no, we want you to beat it.
Yeah,
absolutely. I just felt like I'm used to dealing with stuff like that, right? I really like really difficult, challenging games, but trying to get this to someone else, like, oh, it's a really cool RPG, you should try it, and then they just like. They're like, what is even going on here? Like, how am I even supposed to do this? It can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, it can for sure. I think the number of possible party comps you can get, plus when you start trinketing and speccing your guys out. I mean, we've had people like steamroll the end game, and then we've had people just throw their level 6 heroes into this meat grinder and just weep as they just get eviscerated. So it's actually the balance is kind of a tricky thing, just because the play space is actually quite vast for players.
And that's
some we're experimenting.
But the other part of what you're saying though is an internal mantra that we've had since the very beginning is this is not a game for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think so part of it is like some of the people, like Dan, you're saying you can't imagine getting them into it because what's waiting for them. Like they just might not be the people that the game is for. And that was something we were always very comfortable with, the idea during design, during development. But it's sometimes hard because when we deployed the game, it appealed to a lot more people than we thought it would. And so sometimes we find ourselves like, there's a tax we have to pay for making a game not for everyone, and that's that some people get into it and they're like, F this game right to bits.
Like, it's easy to say, we're not going to make a game for everyone. It sounds great when we're hanging out, and everyone nods wisely and says, oh, absolutely, I read a Gamma Sutra article about that. But the price you pay for that is like shitty Steam reviews where people are screaming and yelling at you. It's angry emails. It's potentially lost sales. Like, there's a very real world tax for not making a game for everyone. We remain comfortable with it. I mean, like I said, we like the game and we believe that, we did more right than wrong. But when you're staring those consequences in the face of not making a game for everyone, it's tough sometimes to hold the line. But I think that's where, like, being good friends and good partners, we can kind of keep each other grounded and not get afflicted and then go off the rails and start making everything super easy or.
Yeah, and I think modding, there's a modding community that's been out there since early access started. We don't officially support it, but we will. We plan on it. Like, we're really excited about we purposefully left a lot of parts of the game unencrypted so that people could delve in there and tweak it. Like, we knew this would happen, and we made that choice to expose it. And we're going to do some work to expose more stuff. And I'm kind of excited for the time when that happens, and maybe some people say, hey, we made an easier version of Darkest Dungeon, and maybe some of those people that are like, I want to experience the art, I want to experience the tactics, I want to like live in this world, but it's just a little much for me right out of the box. That I kind of look forward to seeing people maybe shape it a little bit and maybe reach a bigger audience that way.
Well, it's smart of you guys to put like the basically warning right when you start up the game. Like, this game demands a lot out of you. Was that a late addition to the game just to give people a heads up of what they're in for?
It came in right before we launched early access, because we had a conversation much like this where we're like, what if people just, revile it? So we just said, okay, well, why don't we just hit it on the nose? And before you can even do anything, you have to read this thing that just says, like, get ready to die, because fundamentally, the game takes a left turn where a lot of games sort of stick to the beaten path. Like, death is part of it. The heroes are a resource. These are kind of, I don't want to say like, they're not like crazy revolutionary ideas, but they are a little bit off center. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to just make sure that people understood that this was exactly as intended. Like, you lost a guy, you're fine. It's fine. You ran away from the last 3 quests. As long as you're mildly profitable, it's fine. You're doing well. It's okay.
We want to hustle you to the grief stage or the acceptance stage of grief, excuse me.
Yeah.
Early, and realize that, it's not failure when you lose. I think that's the big thing, or if that makes sense.
I think that does make sense. One thing I've noticed with the people that I have gotten into it that really love it, but at the same time they lose their big crew and then they feel like it's such a time sink to get another party ready to go. And that's been a sticking point with them.
We've had a lot of great ideas kind of come out of the community where maybe you can pay more to recruit higher level dudes right off the stagecoach. Mm-hmm. And those are the kinds of things that once the dust settles a little bit and we've gotten caught up on some amount of sleep, we can kind of start looking at ways of layering that stuff in, because I think that's definitely a sticking point's a great way to put it. I think mm-hmm. it is heartbreaking when you lose those guys.
Like they've come to the notion that they accept the death and the loss of all that stuff. It's just like they really don't want to put in the time to work them through all those dungeons again to get them.
Yeah. So I mean, part of it, and this won't address entirely what you're saying, but when you get a crew through the Darkest Dungeon, there's 4 missions. When you get a crew through the first one, those guys won't go back to the Darkest Dungeon, but you can use them. They don't take up roster space, and you can use them to power level. So if you do a champion mission with 3 Darkest Dungeon survivors and 1 level 0, he'll be level 5 at the end.
Right.
Now, that isn't going to solve that problem all throughout the game, because you have to, get your guys up there in the first place. So we're definitely aware of it, though. I think it's a sound critique for sure.
Yeah, and also on launch day, we dropped, the day after launch, we dropped Resolve XP requirements a little bit for the same, because early access also was fundamentally a little bit different from full release in that there was no in-game. And so we actually kind of wanted it to take a while to grind your heroes up to 5 and 6, because in a way that was like one of the main goals. Now that there's an in-game in there, we're going to be looking at playtime and potentially tweak things down, because we want you to get through and then start New Game Plus and stuff like that. And and we're although the game's out in full release, we've already publicly said that we plan on adding a few things and free updates, and as part of that too, we'll be looking at ongoing tweaks and stuff like that. So we wouldn't be happy for you to feel like, okay, I lost those guys and I just want to quit the game.
Yeah.
So that's something I think we'll maybe still have a hand on the tiller about a little bit.
Dan, you've spent an unhealthy amount of time playing this game.
Around 170 hours.
Wow.
That's not a lot though compared to some of the other people that I've seen with.
I think it's still a lot.
In the thousands, but yeah.
That's a lot, Dan. You did a good job.
Plus, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's solid.
But I was gonna ask, like, what are some of the big tips that you guys recommend, that Dan you'd recommend for people that are plowing their way through this?
So I do want to say I really enjoyed the final boss fight thematically. I thought that was a really cool thing. I want to say, however, stage 3 of the Darkest Dungeon was the most sadistic thing ever. Don't ever do that again. That was horrible. Like, just slogging through that thing, just the same thing over and over and over until, I don't know if you meant to go for that, like a war of attrition against those
that was meant to be the attrition stage.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because we've had people beat that. It's taken up to an hour and a half, and it's gotten as close as I think it's like 14 minutes.
Wow.
Because they just end up going
the
way they need to go. So it's
without
really
spoiling too much about it.
Right.
You can. So it's got a huge. It is though. That was the one where like we want you to feel like, in a way, it's never going to end.
Yeah, I did feel that way. So success there.
It's the Act 2 crisis before the, I don't know. But I mean, those things are, we tiptoe around this a lot in the game, and you know, it's a tough balance where what's the balance between frustration and enjoyment? Like we want you to feel frustration sometimes at a loss, but not to the point of saying, wait, this isn't entertainment anymore. I mean, it's an entertainment product. We're not making a statement on like human condition. You know, it's supposed to, at the end of the day, be fun and interesting and maybe just something that an experience you don't get in other RPGs. But yeah, like
it's a tough balance to sort of break some of those rules, but keep it on the rails. I think for me, the biggest tip I tell people is that you're not the heroes, you're the Hamlet. You know, that's your character, is all those buildings and the health of your town. And so losing guys is just kind of, it happens.
Yeah. New players, upgrade the stagecoach right away. You know,
you guys covered all this stuff in your
in the tips.
Don't be afraid to, when you need gold, grab 4 noobs, run into the dungeon, go until one's left and retreat. Just, you know, be a little bit heartless when you need to be. And like, you know, that don't be afraid to run and pocket what you've got. And I think that like, the biggest frustration we see with new players initially, aside from just the learning curve, is this idea that they're expecting success, right? Yeah. And I think that's why we put that message at the beginning. We're trying to condition you to just understand that, like, don't take this personally. It's not you. It's us. Because a lot of people say, you know,
I've heard that so many times.
Like, I want to like this game, but I'm just terrible at it. And it's like, no, that's the game. You're not terrible. Stop. You know, don't judge yourself so harshly. Like.
So did you guys set out wanting to make an unbelievably difficult game, and then kind of the darkness and the overall tone is a consequence of that? Or how are those two related in your minds? Could this game work with this brutal difficulty but a more lighthearted tone?
I don't think so, because that's what I was saying earlier. I think that the game kind of evolved out of these core ideas, and everything in it is in service to that stuff. So we're both big Lovecraft fans, you know, and it kind of kicked off with, what if we set Lovecraft 500 to 600 years earlier? You know, we like the Twilight Zone, so that idea that there is no overworld, there's no bigger place, you know, that all that matters is where you are. The tone, the writing, everything is steeped in that classic horror. And so thusly the game should be difficult. If it was all like, you know, little anime chibi poodles with helmets and swords, and then was also crushingly difficult, I mean, maybe there's an ironic synergy there that might be fun, but I think the decisions that we made around difficulty, around player agency, around art style, around you know, narration, writing, that kind of thing, those were all sprung from this core concept, basically.
And it's not even to serve difficulty for difficulty's sake. I think the core idea was, what kind of horrible things would adventurers go through? So we're just trying to build a little terrarium where they go through some horrible things, you know, and you know, related to that becomes difficulty, because I think if you never feel the threat of loss, the idea that your best hero could go from doing okay to like triple shot dead in one round of combat. We want that pall to be hanging over you.
The high stakes are important. And I think, like, I'm a big horror movie fan, and my favorite horror movies, the protagonist doesn't really realize how steeped in moral ambiguity they are until it's too late. And that's a big theme in a lot of Lovecraft stuff. Like, you get in so deep and then you realize there's no getting out again. So, you know, we make you horrible. Like Tyler's saying, run a Suicide Squad, you know, throw these guys away. And so by the time you get to the end of the game, you kind of realize, I'm just a part of this problem too. Like, I'm no better than anything in the dungeon. I'm treating these guys terribly. And that, again, was just sort of how we wanted to, you know, pay that out, you know?
I will say, and this is funny for me to comment on the art, but I've heard him say it because we're like basically joined at the hip and can finish each other's sentences at this point. But you did make them a little bit cute. Like, he didn't go completely so dark that you don't bond. Like, I remember you saying, like, you wanted them to have a little bit of cartoony heads and features so that you're like, oh yeah, you know, good old Dismas, let's like get him in there, and then, oh no, he's dead.
Yeah, it's like you're playing with little paper dolls, and they're so overwrought, and they're so upset about all this stuff that's happening to them that it's almost like a little adorable in a way. Like watching my 5-year-old have a meltdown about Lego. It's like, yeah, that's a big problem. You know, like, his world is falling in on him, and I'm like, I gotta pay the mortgage, dude. So it's kind of a little bit like that, like a little bit of voyeurism.
Yeah. Was there like a most devastating moment for you, Dan, in all your playthroughs?
I actually have a couple questions I'd like to throw out there right now. So if you can tell us, what is the criteria for the collector spawning? Is it just random, or is there some other secret behind that?
He likes to collect things.
He sure does.
It's affected a little bit by like how much you have on you that he might want to collect.
All right.
So yeah, there's some, and also I think the type and the length of quest affects it. But yeah, he's a little bit attracted to the lure of gold.
Okay. So this one's sort of a tip, and it's a weird thing I thought, because it was just so counterintuitive that I kept having to do these things. And that's like unequipping all my stuff in town before I sent my guys to the gambling hall, because they could just lose my awesome legendary trinket.
Yeah.
And that was annoying. And another thing is like with the camping aspect, deliberately rearranging my guys in case of an ambush afterward before I camp. That seems sort of kind of like,
surprised that they switch back.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I would say those are a little clunky. Like, some of the things we tried, some of the affliction act outs or the events that can happen, I think like, they didn't end up working the best because you can outwit them just by gamesmanship. But there's a few little casualties along the way in all the different things that we're doing. So yeah, like the idea that you could gamble, lose a trinket, and now you got to like think of pulling it off is clunky, but
it sounds great when you're talking
sure,
about it.
Exactly.
And yeah, in practice, it's like we've eaten a lot of shit for that.
But there's a little bit of like, that's kind of cool. Like the first time it happened, you were like, oh, F no, you did this? Are you serious? And now you're like religiously stripping trinkets off your guys. And
if it's supposed to just condition me to do that, then fine. I'm cool with that, I guess. But it just seemed like an extra wriggle that I shouldn't really have to go through.
Yeah. I don't think we can argue that you absolutely should have to go through it.
So another one other question, like about the bosses. They all seem they're all really unique in their own ways, but they all seem to have like this mechanic where it's like every turn you have to do this much damage to an additional target and then get some real damage on the boss. In most cases, not all. So was there like a conscious design, like just keep the pressure on the player, make them have to do so much damage to additional targets to maintain fight parity or anything like that with going through the boss fight?
Specifically, I mean, we tried to approach each boss just individually, and I think, some ended up having strong similarities. Obviously, some are summoners, some are like that. You kind of have to suppress an element. Some are like pure gimmicks that are like totally mean and unfair that the first time you really have no idea, and then they obliterate your party, and then you quit the game for a day, and then you come back and raise a new party and then beat them, and then tweet that you finally did it.
Indeed.
No, I mean, we try to look at each boss differently, and I think some mechanically are really successful, and a few are like, okay, well, it's maybe a little bit samey, but
I think every time you have to keep track of multiple things, it becomes a little bit more stressful and demanding. So the boss fights, they were just added wrinkles so that you're constantly juggling one more thing. Given the fact that you've already walked your guys through the whole dungeon and they may not be in the best shape, we just wanted to just up the ante a little bit. So the ones I think that have been really successful, although people hate the Hag, I love the Hag. I like the Prophet too, with marking the spots. Those bosses are kind of neat because they're thematically tied to who the bosses are. So I think those are some of my faves for sure. And I really liked the end boss quite a bit, to be honest.
There's certainly threw me for. I mean, certainly don't want to spoil it, but like the first time that one move is used, and you're just wondering what is this. And then you realize what's going on, and you're just like, oh, come on.
So that's funny because I'm not going to spoil it, but we talked a lot about wanting that dawning realization of horror on the player. Like, wait, what is going on? Are you what?
Right.
That little journey in that moment was really important. So we didn't want to spell it out with like a pop up.
Right. There's no indication of anything going on. You kind of have to figure it out, and then you're like, "Oh no!" It's great. So well done on that. That definitely worked really well.
The barking was a really important addition. That the heroes say things at that point,
right?
When you're, and I think that's another example of like, I wouldn't stand up necessarily. Well, actually, maybe it would be a good GDC talk, but like there's an element in that battle there at the end where you're like, this like in general should be terrible design, but it's so fitting for this game. And for what we were trying to do, that it, like, it's kind of, I think, a little bit of the like, you got to learn how to, paint traditionally, so you know how to paint non-traditionally, or things like that. So that was kind of fun. And I mean, before launch, we're like, I hope this goes over well because there's going to be some angry people.
At that point, that hopefully you're ready for it. At that point, you're ready for what that is.
Yeah, I think it's like that fight really essentially is the entire game experience. You go through, you deal with all the different types of damaging mechanics, and you maybe lose some players or some characters through that experience. So it really was like a compacting of a dungeon, basically.
Did you guys have? Did you have more questions?
I mean, yeah. Why is the Jester so terrible?
He got a little low. I feel like he's got better. I mean, I've seen a lot of references to people pairing Jesters with Abominations and keeping the stress down, because the Abomination was a bit OP and probably still is fairly powerful.
Still definitely OP.
Yeah. But I mean, here's the thing that I love about the Jester being terrible, quote unquote terrible,
Sure.
is that he's a wild card, which is exactly what the class looks like. Like he's a Joker. If you build a party around him being in any position and sort of being unpredictable, you can be very, very successful. But the minute you put a tank in that party, or you put like position dependent guys, it'll all fall apart. So I kind of like that he's like Yoshimitsu in Soul Calibur, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is ridiculous. Why would anyone be? You just get worked every time. Somebody knows how to play Yoshimitsu, it's over for you. So he's our Yoshimitsu.
All right.
Perfect.
That works. So what are your guys' favorite characters from the whole cast?
I love the leper, which is funny because a lot of people just hate the leper. Like, we did this community discussion coming near launch about like, hey, where do you rank the characters? Like, if you had to group them into tiers, and the leper always ranks kind of in the bottom tier. But I mean, the character design visually is amazing. I mean, I this is a little bit of an Age of Kings reference, but yeah, King Baldwin of Jerusalem, the Leper King, and he was in like Kingdom of Heaven, the Orlando Bloom movie. That so there's a little bit of that in there, but thematically is awesome, and like we realized like, holy shit, like our RPG has a leper in it. Like, who can say that? That's pretty cool. That he's this huge heavy hitter. Like, mechanically, just thinking through, like, okay, well, like, what? Well, a leper wouldn't feel as much pain, or maybe he'd already be so inured to like the horrors of life that like some of the things that like send other people on a stress fit, he'd be like, whatever, that's like the best day I've had in a week. So he's a stress tank. And I like the idea that like heavy damage, low accuracy, not the most skilled fighter, but he's going to make up for it in brute force. And I just think really, I love his design and just think he's neat. Yeah.
I guess I got a soft spot for the grave robber.
There's matrimonial
factors
in that one.
I kind of based it a little bit off my wife. She likes the savvy, roguey kind of characters, and I always imagined like she's this society woman who estate got bankrupted, and then she turned to almost like this Catwoman style grave robbing. And I think that the throwing dagger stuff is great, and especially the lunge and shadow fade kind of cycling combo. If you get that rolling, it's pretty cool. What about you?
I mean, I guess I started leaning toward Abomination in my later play just because they were so powerful and I was able to make great compositions. But one class I really hated when the game came out in early access, but now is like my favorite, and I include him in like all my great comps, is the Plague Doctor.
Yeah,
right.
Just
Yeah,
so
she's
so
gone through
amazing.
quite a journey. She was much maligned for the better part of the year, but part of that too was because the Cove is like, we always had this idea that we have four sort of like dungeon environments, and with the Cove being held out until fall of this past year, the second Blight susceptible dungeon was never online, basically. So Blight-centric characters, the Plague Doctor essentially, were pretty handicapped prior to that dungeon coming out. Whereas, if you take her into the Cove, it's like game over Fishtown, right?
It's pretty amazing.
The Plague Doctor was definitely also, I think, a favorite because visual design wise, really cool, helped the game stand out. And it's funny that like we did the Plague Doctor, and all of a sudden there's like Bloodborne of the Plague Doctor and other. I'm not saying there's a relation. I'm just saying they became popular again all of a sudden. Which was cool.
It was a groundswell of Plague Doctoring.
Yeah. And I like dropping those bombs, on people. And I've always liked the dots a little bit, even though they were underpowered for a bit, and so
yeah. So you guys talk about how you're so game focused and less studio focused. At least you started out that way. Did you have kind of internal expectations of sales going into this whole process?
I don't know, man. We were just, before early access launched, we were just scared. Like we were right up inside our savings and just gouging our own net worths, and just crossing our fingers and doing as much work as we possibly could to make it as good as we possibly could, and didn't really have time to sort of project or imagine what sales could look like or do like comparative analysis of other similar titles and all the stuff that you're supposed to do. We were just like, we just have to make the game as good as it can be, and that's all. Every bit of focus went there. So it was a pretty magical experience there last February for sure.
I'm going to disagree a little bit because I did a lot of comparative analysis.
You can talk to me about it.
I know. Well, I mean, we did approach it like we're veterans. We forewent other jobs for this, so there was always a high opportunity cost from the beginning, which I know we're agreed on. And I remember, like the day that we actually kicked it off and said, okay, it's no longer just a game we're talking about. We're doing this for sure. We had other job opportunities that were, trying to get us to go to. And, and these are like decent level positions because, Chris was an art director before. I was running a small studio before. So these were like high opportunity costs. So what we wanted our goal, like I remember we said it a lot, was if we can make the game we want to make and make the equivalent of what we could make with our normal jobs, that would be like that would be heaven. Like that's like the win-win-win scenario. And so we tried to approach it like a business in the standpoint of making sure we were confident enough in the idea that we thought it could sell enough to sustain that.
To make it worthwhile.
Yeah, we didn't want to end up like, oh my gosh, like we made such a niche product that nobody bought it. So we did we were always considering a little bit commercially, could this succeed? But no, we never in any scenario that we ran, and publishers we talked to beforehand, like before we launched, because especially after we kickstarted, we had the chance to talk to some people that were interested in maybe publishing it because we had already demonstrated it had some appeal. But before Kickstarter, nobody. But there's no scenario we ran where it did as well as it's done, and so we feel incredibly lucky that we've been able to achieve that goal of doing as well or better as we could have done with the other jobs and making the game that we want to make.
So is the lesson just that quality shines through in the end, or what do you think? What can you attribute to that success?
I think quality does shine through, but I think at every step we never took anything for granted. Even for this past launch, we did, we were already a bit of a name, and we still, did as many, site takeovers as we could afford to do. We still engaged with as many streamers as we could afford to do. So every step of the way, we've just tried to do absolutely everything we could to further the game's success in a sense. So I think quality shines. I don't know if it always shines through without blood, sweat, and tears and hard work and a lot of emailing and trying to keep your costs down and not being crazy with the money and all that stuff.
I think checkpoints were really important for us. When we really believed in the idea ourselves, and we would tell friends about it and they'd get excited, and so we're like, okay, that's a checkpoint. And then we did this trailer, this Terror and Madness announcement trailer in October 2013. We released it, and that was the first time we told the world the game existed, or it didn't exist yet, but we were making it. We got a great response. We're like, okay, that's encouraging. And then Kickstarter was a really big moment for us because, we looked at each other in the eye and said, if we can't go out there and get what we're asking, we shouldn't be making this game. It's this game is appealing to us, but if we can't convince other people it's interesting, like we're not going to come out of that and go, we're going to double down. We would have come out of that and said, this is not the right thing. We have to change something. So I look at it like those old like pole position racing games or something, or the ones where you have to like reach a checkpoint and get fuel and reach a checkpoint and get fuel. So for us, it was like game announcement, Kickstarter, early access. Obviously, once we Kickstarted, we were committed to finish the game no matter what. But to be able to fully do what we wanted to do, each of those points has been a really, really important checkpoint. So I don't know. I think having a hook, you got to have in this marketplace. There's so many awesome games out. The ones that seem to stand out are just like either a really unique hook or quality. Sometimes I think some of the games that have been really successful, quite frankly, are not very high quality, but have a really cool hook. And then if you can manage to get a hook and quality together, then you have a chance to stand out.
There we go. So what does the future look like for you guys?
We're going to talk about that like today.
Like literally, we're in the room where we kick this company off right now. And this week we're going to spend a couple days because we get that question a lot. And even, trying to work out things amongst our own staff. And in the last few months, especially, we've made ourselves not talk about it because we're like, any time we spend talking about it should be spent making this game better. Yeah. Because we have a lot of monsters and bosses and things to do. Yeah. And so now we can actually, have a conversation about something that isn't like
pressing that we have to get done for the next build.
Yeah.
in an hour.
The things we know for sure are we still have some Kickstarter obligations to finish, both in-game and physical, like art book. That's going to be super fun. We've got those things too. We PS4 and Vita is announced and confirmed and already in development. That's awesome. The guys at Sony are rad. The people working with us to help port are rad. We exhibited at PSX in December in San Francisco with that. Those things. So I think between those obligations and the other platforms that we've announced,
They'll keep us busy.
Yeah, that's going to keep us busy for a while. And then the things we'd love to do, which are no secret, are like, it's an RPG, so more expansions of some sort, some more, DLC, whether it's free or paid eventually. That's awesome. There's other platforms that look pretty interesting, other media. So all that stuff, even without even talking about what's game number 2. But I don't know. We've had a lot of fun making this game. I think it would be a shame if we didn't make another.
Yeah,
So
we could do that.
Yeah.
Well, it's good news, man. A lot of fans out there are going to be happy to hear that.
Yeah,
any
but I think,
parting thoughts?
like Tyler was saying, first and foremost, we want to fulfill those backer obligations and just make sure that the community that we built feels like the game is supported and we're not going anywhere. Like we're very attached to the game. We love it and we're grateful to have found an audience. So we want to keep watering that soil.
And as it turns out, we might want to take a little small break now and then too, because this is different in the new world of gaming. Early access is basically like releasing over and over and over again and never stopping. It's like a live game. It's like a mobile, a live supported game. And so even though we had an amazingly, thankfully successful early access launch, like we've been working our tails off the whole early access. And at some point, once support is under control, and once we've got some of these other Kickstarter things pushed out, a little bit of rest and recoup would be nice too.
Gotta mend the family fences a little bit.
Definitely. Well, hey, congratulations, guys, on a hell of a launch and a hell of a game.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you,
guys.
Cool. And thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Game Informer Show. Be sure to tune in next week. We'll have a new one waiting for you. Bye.